Okay, let's get this study session going. You're all here to present, and Mr. Archuleta just walked in, so we're doing good. We'll turn it over to Superintendent Abrego. So,
Good. Board members, today we're going to be reviewing the Unified Improvement Plan from the schools, also the district plan. And just a little quick information on the district improvement plan. Our job is to support our schools, so we want to make sure that we emphasize three major strategies for the district to help support our schools. One of them is to help all our schools in the areas of English, language arts, and math. So that's very important that we have strategies for that. Also, upcoming, we're going to try to improve technology in all of our schools. And third is we want to help all our schools retain and recruit outstanding leaders, whether they be teachers or administrators, central office people, or building level people. But that's basically the components of our district plan. And now I'm going to have each principal just share a little bit about their Unified Improvement Plan, and their plans are 60 pages, so we've asked them to just come up here and give us just a brief outline. They will all be presenting for about 3 to 4 minutes, and then give us the most important parts of their plan. We will be doing this in alphabetical order, so that's for our principals know. We'll take all the elementary schools first, then the middle schools, and then we'll get to the high school. And all we ask, or I ask of the principals, is please just make sure that you identify the area that you're going to be improving. Give us the action step or the strategy, and just let us know who's going to be doing it and when, okay? So with no further ado, I'm going to turn it over to our schools, and we are up with Elsa.
Good evening, Dr. Abrego, President Rolla, distinguished board members. It's always a pleasure to get to stand in front of you and talk to you about ALSUP, so I'm glad to be here. I do have a brief presentation for you, and Mrs. Menard is just giving you a handout, just kind of summarizing those notes, so that if you have any questions at the end, we'll be able to go through it. All right. Well, I just wanted to start by sharing our first major improvement strategy. And our first major improvement strategy is around standards and instructional planning. And we're implementing a curriculum that is aligned to the Colorado academic standards and will ensure a rigorous and effective instructional planning. So that's our first major improvement strategy, and I will share with you some of our action steps after I get through the three strategies. Our second major improvement strategy is best first instruction. And this is instructional staff members will consistently provide aligned, integrated, and research-based instruction that engages students cognitively and ensures that students learn to mastery. And our third major improvement strategy in our UIP is school leadership actively develops a high-quality professional staff through professional learning, supervision, evaluation, and commitment to continuous improvement. So I think the most important part of the UIP for us is those are our three major improvement strategies, but then what are we doing as leaders to make sure that we're being successful on those improvement strategies? So I listed out some of the main things that we're doing here. Our first is around instructional planning. We have begun STEAM Fridays at our school. So one of our goals is around instructional planning that really implements real-world problems and real-world questioning. And so we've implemented STEAM Fridays to accomplish that goal. Instructional planning ensures equitable and challenging learning experiences. I've stood up here for a couple of years and told you guys the importance of differentiation and individualized instruction at ALSUP. We know the levels of our students. We use data to analyze where they're at, and then we make sure that we're meeting their needs through instruction. Instructional staff clarifies, reframes instructional strategies, routines, or content in a timely way to ensure groups of students and individual students are mastering required learning. And this is our workshop model. And again, I've spoke to you about this before, but we have a very clear integrated workshop model at ALSUP, and where kids are actively engaged in learning. We use a Launch Explore summary model to make sure students are responsible for their own learning, and the teacher facilitates the discussion and the activities while the students are engaged in speaking about what they're learning and deepening their understandings. Last couple of things here. And this is really where Dawn and I's responsibility comes into the Unified Improvement Plan. Obviously, Dawn and I and the coaches are the responsible ones for providing that professional development. But Don and I are really working on making sure that we're providing regular, meaningful feedback to the teachers. So we're really focused on walkthroughs. A teacher cannot grow without expertise being given to them. And so we're really mindful of getting into the classrooms and giving them that appropriate feedback. Professional learning is ongoing and job embedded. We have a mentoring program for our first year teachers. We have both our coaches and our interventionists, and we provide opportunities to dig into lesson studies through our STEAM Fridays. And the school implements a comprehensive and coherent approach to meet the needs of students who are not English speaking or limited language proficiency. We currently provide an ELD block, and we also have biliteracy in kindergarten and first grade. So Dr. Abrego had asked to kind of tell you where we're at in progress here. We have begun all of these items, and we are actively doing these things in our school currently. The responsibility depends on the particular goal, but for the major improvement strategy 3 around administration, me and Don are obviously the ones most responsible for that, because we're the ones giving the feedback, we're the ones in the room. And for major improvement strategies 1 and 2, Don and I are obviously actively engaged in the professional planning and things like that, but we also have our coach that supports us. We also utilize the expertise of master teachers in the building. So we've also assigned them some responsibility as well in our unified improvement plan. And lastly, it's not on here, but our community is integrated into everything that we do. So as part of our unified improvement plan, we've tied community goals into all of our major improvement strategies. And our building accountability team is actively engaged in going through the UIP and developing it so that we can best support our students. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to ask them. And I hope I made it up probably over.
You're fine.
I do have a question.
Yes.
I'm not sure whose fault it might have been, but in our packet we received,
Mm-hmm.
Friday packet, I believe the dates on page 4, on your benchmark updates, it should be August 2016 instead of 2015.
Oh, you are correct. Thank you. I appreciate that. It's a living, breathing document. So we'll go in and make that change, and I appreciate you pointing it out to me. Thank you. Are there any other questions?
I just have one.
Yes.
When you said walkthroughs, okay, I recall back a few years, walkthroughs. Who's doing the walkthroughs?
So Don and I do the walkthroughs because ultimately we're responsible for evaluating the teachers. We do have a walkthrough form that we use that's based on the Colorado evaluation system. We have the standards kind of listed out. We check off for teachers what we see, and then we provide feedback for them, and we do ask them to respond to us via email.
Okay, I was just concerned because, you know, before, people would walk through that really didn't know what each school was doing and what the teacher, so I was a little concerned.
No, it's
Okay, I just
me and
wanna
Don
make
all the
sure
way.
it's somebody who's hands-on.
All right.
So I have one question, well, it's probably a
Okay,
multitude of
all right.
questions,
Yeah.
but I'll try and roll it up into one.
All right.
You know, I look at the Unified Improvement Plans, last year being my first time on the
Mm-hmm.
Board of Education, and I seen the Unified Improvement Plans, but what I didn't see and I still don't see is timeframes and that type of things. When are we gonna expect to get to here? When can we try to get to there? If we're gonna make this change, who's gonna be responsible for the
Okay.
evaluation part of that? So I'll be having personal conversation with you, and I don't wanna do it here.
Yeah.
Because I'm gonna do it with all of the schools, not because it's any of my business, I just would like to know,
Timelines.
what the evaluation criteria is. I say I'm gonna do this, but if I don't get it done, what I'd like to know as a member of the Board of Education, what roadblocks are in your way that you're not able to complete what you need done, but without knowing what you need done and by when you need it done, I can't evaluate that type of stuff, so.
Yeah.
I'll be having an individual conversation with you guys, not as a bad thing, it's just
Yeah.
just so I can understand if you need assistance from the board, how we can go about giving that to you, so you have the tools to be successful. I just don't see any
timeframes in there as to who's gonna do what, when, and how.
And I certainly, I look forward to meeting with you because I do have that documented out in my full UIP. I did kind of bullet some stuff here, but I do have it documented out. And I'm on the same page as you. I believe in accountability. And the only way to hold people accountable is to know that they're progressing at the level that they said they were going to progress. And without dates, you can't do that. And I totally honor that. If a teacher tells me they're going to do something, I give them a time frame to get it done in, and I would expect the same as a principal. So I look forward to sitting down with you and going through those time frames.
Thank you.
All right.
You know, that kind of takes me back to strategic plans, because they used to set a time frame every so often. We'll reach it in 6 weeks, we'll reach it in a half a year, you know. And you go back as a group and say, did I reach this?
Yep.
And how can I measure it? Strat, you know that.
Yeah.
So I think you're aiming at the same thing under the UIP title, but, you know, we're just not, because you have all the paperwork, we're not
Right.
seeing it.
Yep. No, absolutely.
So-
And anytime happy to sit down with you guys, and I want to make sure that I'm meeting your needs as well. You know, I want to make sure sometimes we know things in our head, but we need to be able to share them so that you guys are able to hold us accountable for the work that we need to get done as a district and as a building. So more than happy to sit down at any time.
I have a question.
Sure.
This weekend, we were at CASB, and our first session that 3 of us went to was turnaround schools. One of the things that they always mentioned is communicating with the teachers, getting the ideas from the teachers. And I know you mentioned your administration,
Yep.
your coaches. Do you communicate with the teachers? Are they allowed to give you some kind of information, or do you meet with them regularly and to get this information? Because they did say if we're going to succeed and get out, everybody has to have input till we know what we're not
Yep.
doing.
Absolutely. We have a very collaborative building. I meet with my instructional leadership team twice a month. We go through the UIP. They share their ideas. They let me know kind of where they're at as a staff when it comes to professional development. For instance, when we rolled out the workshop model, it has so many different parts to it. They were giving me feedback around, you know, we need help with questioning. We need help with the summary. So I have my instructional leadership team that I meet with. And then I also have my equity team to make sure that we're meeting the needs of all students. We meet with them twice a month as well. So the teachers definitely have a voice, very collaborative at the school.
Are there any other questions from the board?
Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you guys for your time. Have a good evening.
Thank you, and we're just gonna have to go a little bit different direction because we're trying to go in alphabetical order. Central will be next, so we'll let her come in when she gets here. I think traffic is a little bit heavy. But, so, the next school that will be up will be DuPont.
Good evening, President Rolla, distinguished board members, and Dr. Abrego. It's a pleasure to come before you today to talk about the major improvement strategies that have been identified by DuPont and the stakeholders that live within the community. So I'm going to talk about the first 2 standards that we've identified, and that is standards and instructional planning. The school will implement a curriculum that is aligned to Colorado academic standards and ensures rigorous, effective instructional planning. And Standard 2, which is best first-time instruction. Instructional staff members provide aligned, integrated, and research-based instruction that engages students cognitively and ensure that students learn to mastery. The reason I'd like to talk about these 2 together is because at DuPont we have a leadership team that we started last year. We call it the Great Public Schools team, and so now they're currently called the GPS team, and we're going to recognize their efforts later on in the board meeting. This team began initially looking at the way time was used at DuPont last year to make sure that everything that we were doing was allowing for students to benefit from bell-to-bell learning, and we looked at our transitions and how our transitions impacted learning. But then that team has now morphed into a leadership team that includes members of every grade level, a special ed representative. We have both of our coaches on that team. We also have one of our paraprofessionals on our team, so she lends her ear, and our child psychologist. That team, over the course of the summer, developed a data protocol that we use on early release Wednesdays to look at student data that is collected within the week right before the early release. When our teams come together on those early release Wednesdays, we have a data collection form that identifies bands of instruction. So in any given grade level, I'm going to use second grade, for example, we have 5 classrooms at second grade. One of our classrooms is a Literacy Squared classroom, which operates under a framework of developing language through developing literacy in Spanish and developing the English simultaneously. So we have 4 classrooms in which we have bands of instruction. So we will have a classroom of students that are accelerated. We have a classroom of students that are what you would consider cusp to low benchmark kids. We have a classroom of students that are getting instruction that are designed for our strategic or kind of our middle of the road kids. And then we have a classroom that is receiving the majority of the support in the form of our paraprofessionals and our special ed teams, which push into the classrooms at that time. What makes this so unique is that the instruction that is developed on those early release Wednesdays is developed to meet the specific needs based on the student data that is collected right before we have the early release. Teachers and teams are asked then to collect all the information on this data collection form, and Dina and I, my assistant principal, then give feedback on the instructional strategies and the groupings that have been developed. So that has been pretty effective in giving us some initial gains on STAR and DIBELS, so we're very proud of that system of support that's been developed. Then Standard 4, our tiered support, implements a comprehensive system of tiered academic and behavioral support to enable students to master grade level expectations. Through our Connect for Success grant, we are looking at multi-tiered systems of support. We started by using a self-assessment rubric that helped us identify 2 areas that we would like to develop. That is data analysis and parent engagement. We are working with Jesse Martinez to implement a program that will bring parent tutors in to support all of our grade levels. So we feel like that parent engagement piece is going to be addressed there. So the GPS, our leadership team, is going to focus the rest of the year on making that data analysis sharp and tight and very targeted for each child at DuPont. So I would like to entertain any questions or thoughts or ideas that you have at this time.
I have a question.
Any
Yes.
questions from my board members?
Yes.
In the packet we received about DuPont,
Yes.
it had the communication and your assessments. Is those are those different types of it gives a date, but they said it's almost done. So is the communication and assessment is going to be part of what you're trying to do with your GPD team?
So the part of communication, so it really is looking right now like a bottom-up approach. So our teachers develop the plans for instruction, and then those plans are turned in after the early release Wednesday. We meaning my assistant principal and I, provide the feedback on the plan based on the data that has been collected, and then we give that back to the teachers for them to implement the feedback that we have given. So this happens on a cyclical basis, so every early release Wednesday, this is the process that we follow. So the communication is ongoing, and then through walkthroughs in the classrooms, we look for the implementation of the instructional planning that has occurred on those early release. So that is an ongoing piece.
Are there any other questions from our board? No?
Okay.
Thank you
All
so
right.
much.
Thank you.
And I believe the next school, Hanson, the principal's not here, so I'm going to have to skip. And the next school that will be up will be Kemp.
Dr. Abrego, President Rolla, distinguished members of the board, Thanks for giving us the opportunity to come talk to you about KEMP and some of the improvement strategies we have in place this year. I'm Bob Savage, the principal. With me is Kristen West, our assistant principal. We're going to start off with Standard 2, Best First Instruction for our first two major improvement strategies. And the first one of these strategies that we have that we think is really important is the implementation of Benchmark. We know that you guys spent a lot of money on that this year, and we're implementing with fidelity at KEMP and seeing tremendous results. It's really a good program. I'm seeing first graders annotating text, underlining and writing notes on the side of the text. I'm seeing fifth graders comparing nonfiction and fiction and having higher level discussions and answering questions regarding the text. So it's really a great program. When you're going to implement a program like that, you have to have the training. We've had the training before the school year started, of course. But then also on our PD days, we're using half that day for specific training, where the teachers identify the components of Benchmark that they're struggling with or where they have questions. And then we have the Benchmark trainers come in, they're focusing on those exact areas. We're also making our coaches be responsible for this strategy or for this major improvement strategy, and that's a key focus of their working with the teachers is implementing Benchmark. So I think that we're going to see a lot of good results from this program. The next major improvement strategy we have for Best First Instruction relates to parental engagement. Last year at KEMP, we had basically two parent nights, a back to school night and our haunted house of learning. This year we really want to focus on getting help for the parents. So all the research shows that when parents are more involved in the school does better. This year we're adding two academic nights, a literacy night and a math night, where the teachers can come to our school and they can be shown how they can help their students at home. We're partnering with Jesse Martinez on the literacy night, and it's January 10th. We encourage all of you to come. And the math night will be in February. We're really excited about those two nights. Our third major improvement strategy is around tiered support, and this is a continuation of a goal we had last year. So 2 years ago, KEMP had more than 47 school suspensions in the year. That was unacceptable. So last year we implemented a positive behavior system that reduced that number to 25. Still unacceptable, but good improvement. This year we're implementing two new strategies. One is every kid is having a morning meeting every day. That's a 20-minute time period where they build community and where they have direct social emotional instruction. And then we also have a system-wide school system of classroom management where every kid, no matter if they're in second grade, kindergarten, fifth grade, no matter if they're in the art room, the gym, the lunchroom, or on the playground, follow the same expectations, have the same consequences and the same rewards, and they know exactly what is expected of them. So far, these two are showing great success, where our number is below 5 suspensions for the first semester, so we're on pace of meeting that goal of cutting that in half again. So those are 3 of our major improvement strategies for next year, and we'd like to open it up to questions.
Are there any questions from our board members?
Yes, your engagement, is that just for the 2 nights? The literacy, January the 10th and February math night, is that the only 2 engagements with the parents?
Well, those are the 2 more formal parental engagements. We also have a parental group that meets once a month. The parent group, we also have breakfast with the principal every month where we go over different topics. The last one we shared the parent compact for Title I. So we have lots of opportunities for parent engagement throughout the year, but those are 2 more formal nights where we can introduce ways where they can help their kids in the different subjects.
What was the number you said on 3 years ago on the suspension?
47 suspensions, and I gotta be honest with you, it was probably more than that.
Okay.
That year, me and the principal were both new, and neither one of us knew how to implement them into IC until late November. So it was probably more in the 50s.
So what did you do to bring him from that number down to, what, you said 5
Yeah.
now? So
No, it's
5.
something we're very proud of. So last year, Christina Casas was our principal last year, and together we worked on implementing a positive behavior system. And it's extensive, but I can definitely go through it if you'd like to hear about it.
Oh, no.
But one thing we did was academic awards,
Okay.
where we awarded students on different traits: academic excellence, positive attitude, integrity, respect, determination. And over the course of the year, we gave out close to 1,000 awards and formal award ceremonies, where the year before we didn't give out 1 award. And there's a lot of other aspects of that too. Just today, kids were able to purchase an activity with a principal where they got to have kind of a Steve Spangler type science show where I was mixing up chemicals and just, having fun.
Sounds good.
Is those the awards y'all have on the doors for the students?
So when you come in the building and you see some awards in the display case, that's actually different. Every month, we have 3 students of the month for each trait, or whatever the trait of the month is, the traits I just mentioned. And then those students come and have lunch with me and Miss West, where we have pizza, and then we take their picture and we put them up on the wall. Yeah, that'll be tomorrow if you want to come have pizza with us.
Sounds awesome, though.
Fun.
Are there any other questions? Okay, thank you so much, and we're gonna keep moving forward.
Thank you.
I believe the next school that we have coming up will be Monaco.
Good evening, Dr. Abrego, President Rolla, and the distinguished members of the board. It's good to be here again in front of all of you to share with you our focus strategies that our Assistant Principal Dorothy Wolf is sharing with you. So the last 2 years, we've been really focusing a lot on implementing a variety of systems at Monaco to strengthen the school culture, strengthen a school-wide learning community, build trust amongst the staff. We've also brought and strengthened the quality of our teaching staff, as well as done a lot around deepening community and parent engagement. So that's been the context of our work the last 2 years. And last spring, we had the opportunity, along with DuPont, to be a part of a special CEA and NEA grant that was called Better Schools. And through that work last spring and the team of teachers we brought with us, we identified a clear instructional focus for this year. And it really centers around our students showing measurable growth around comprehension within literacy and asking questions and answering questions that are rooted in analysis, creation, and evaluation. And our staff really unified last spring with clarity around that being the next step and something that we can clearly measure through an array of formative assessments throughout each week and each month. So our first strategy, similar to some of the other schools, is that we'll consistently implement a curriculum that's aligned to the Colorado academic standards and consistently ensure rigorous, effective instructional planning. And teams will be accountable for weekly collaboration centered around formative assessments to monitor and adjust instruction. And progress will be measured through team collaboration rubrics, observational feedback, and assessment data. So some of the action steps we're taking to really make this effective and consistent, we have an observation cycle that the two of us as well as our coach do, where every teacher every week is observed for 15 minutes and then gets 15 minutes of feedback on a weekly basis. And particularly because we have a number of teachers in their first 3 years in the profession, that feedback is invaluable to push their growth. In addition, our professional development's been focused around best reading practices, and we start out the year really clearly defining for the staff what we expected in every aspect of the literacy day, from shared literacy to read aloud, all across the different elements. Teachers are also getting to select their own professional development that we're providing. We're providing some distinct PD for our new teachers, as well as common PD for the entire staff around higher order questioning, thinking max, Socratic seminars, a variety of things that strengthen what they do with students around bolstering their literacy skills. In addition, one of our UIP goals that you'll see that's outlined, because every one of our action steps has clear dates around it. For the second part of the year, we're really wanting to get teachers able to observe their colleagues, their either more experienced colleagues or ones that are strong in certain areas. And related to our UIP, our Better Schools team that became our design team meets twice a month, and once a month we look at our UIP and we look specifically at every action step and say, how are we doing? Have we completed that action step? Are we in progress? Or do we need to make sure that that's one of our next steps? Dorothy's going to share with you our second step, which is around team planning.
So to help support our teachers in their instructional, providing that standards-based instruction, our second improvement strategy focuses on instructional planning. So the school will consistently implement a curriculum that is aligned to Colorado State standards and will consistently ensure rigorous, effective instructional planning. Teams will be accountable for weekly collaboration centered around formative assessments to monitor and address instruction. Progress will be measured through the team collaboration rubrics, observational feedback, and assessment data. So some of the action steps that we're taking towards reaching this goal is our teams meet weekly as grade level teams to plan instruction, and we've identified observable behaviors that we expect to see when we're in there, so we know what we're looking for and they know what we're looking for. Each week our coach is attending those meetings to provide support in the development of instructional strategies and in the development of formative assessments. And then Ari and myself attend every other week, and then we're providing feedback for them so that they know how they're doing towards the goal of our observables that we've identified. And there's also a collaboration rubric that we came up with, and this in December they self-assessed to see how they are collaborating as a team and identified some next steps for themselves. And then we have a grade level chair team, and that team is focused on kind of some of the building logistics, and part of that is team planning. So all of our team planning protocols, all of the feedback is shared there in that team, and they're kind of guiding what our planning looks like as a school. So now I think we're open for questions.
I have one. Can you explain what is Rubik? Yes, please.
Yeah, so for instance, and are you talking about the teacher rubric or ones for students?
It just said Rubik collaboration.
Yeah, the collaboration rubric, great. So for each team, we wanted to be really clear about when you get together weekly for 45 minutes with a focus on creating meaningful assessments that are aligned to the standards, creating a rubric, the collaboration rubric lets them know what we expect to see during that time. So it's kind of an itemized list that lets them know what does an outstanding team look like and what do they focus on during that time, and really lays out ways for them to self-assess. How are we doing as a team? Are we focusing on the right things that'll push student learning and growth? So it's to drive their collaboration and have a sense of how well are we doing as a team.
So I have a question. So in the next steps of all of this stuff, Unified Improvement Plan, you identify something in the rubric that's not quite where it needs to be. So you have hopefully an identified process to get to where you need to get to. Once again, you know, not knowing what really your goal is, and if it's not met, what are the next steps to get there, are questions that I have in most of the Unified Improvement Plans.
Yeah. And what's really served us this year has been that monthly checkup that we're doing as a design team to look at every action step and very honestly evaluate what kind of progress have we made. And if we haven't made sufficient progress or we're not in sync with the timeline, then we prioritize that and we say, if it's November, we say, how in December can we make sure that we're getting the ball rolling with peer observations? Or how can we make sure if the collaboration rubric, if we said each team's going to self-assess, that we're executing that and making sure it's happening. So I think that regular monthly checkup, and when we're succeeding, really celebrating that, and when we haven't fully met the goal, saying to each other, okay, what are we going to do to make sure we reach it, and holding ourselves accountable to that timeline.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And again, we're just a little bit out of order. We're going to go with Rose Hill next, and then hopefully we can get also DuPont. You're okay. Let's see.
Hi, thank you for having us tonight. Our UIP strategies, when we came together we're with parents, teachers, paras, we all sat short, sorry. It involved all of us, and we each gave an input which included parents wanted feedback as to what their students were learning and how to support them, but they didn't know what questions to ask. They wanted to see monthly calendars of questions they could ask their students when they got home so they could support their kiddos and talk about it. The second part was teachers felt that we needed tier support, implementing a multi-system of support, response to interventions, positive behavior intervention support. So we have a team now that does that of teachers. We also have a leadership team. We also have an intervention team. That is a group of teachers that have more experience than anybody in the building so that they can tell us what has worked instead of retrying everything that hasn't. Everything is data-driven. Teachers, all their goals have to have data to show how they're going to improve the academic achievement of students as well as their academic growth. We also do informal observations as well. 2 grade levels per week are assigned to myself, the assistant principal, and the coach. We do note catchers, which include all the standards-based parts that teachers are required by law to do. We also have their basic needs met. A lot of our students are in need of clothes, food, a place for their children to be. So whatever needs they have, we make sure we've got up to like 40 baskets for Thanksgiving. We're up to, I think, about 35 now for Christmas, which includes gifts. We've worked with the community. We have churches that come in and have supported us by giving us candy to sell for the kids. Skate City has stepped forward and offered buses so that our kids that are academically achieving their goals get rewarded. So we're on a regular basis. They do have Rose. We have a Rose Hill promotion where the kids receive Rose tickets, and every Friday they can go in there and buy stuff that they need. Students that have perfect attendance have attended pizza parties in the cafeteria. So we're trying to promote that education is fun for them, and this is why they come to school, so that they can have a better life than we did. So that's it's best first instruction and tiered support is what they wanted. Any questions?
Good. Thank you so much. I believe there are no questions.
Thank you.
And for our board members, we're running a little bit, we're going to run into some time difficulties. My suggestion is if we could finish up the elementary, because we have the CAFR people here for the other report, if we could just modify our plan a little bit, have one more elementary school, go back to the report, because that's going to be very important that they've come a long way to do that. And then if we have time, go back to the plans. Would that be acceptable?
Fine with me.
Okay, good. So we have one more elementary school that's here. If we could have Hanson School.
First of all, let me apologize. Mr. Superintendent, Dr. Abrego, I apologize for being late. We had a music program,
Okay.
and I needed to make sure our kids got home safe, so I apologize to you and to the board. At Hanson, we are working on best first instruction. We think that that's really what our kids need. And we are also working on leadership, and we are working on climate and culture and working together as a team. So with our best first instruction, our strongest focus right now has been in writing. We feel like that's our greatest need, and that's where we're focusing. We are developing a rubric that had previously been developed with Mark Overmeyer and work through the district. But we've combined it with, since we have the largest population of second language learners, we've also combined it with the WIDA standards to kind of create our own rubric that dovetails those two things so our kids can be successful, all of our kids can be successful. We are working at developing writing prompts school-wide that are culturally and developmentally appropriate for all of our kids. Our bilingual classrooms are getting those prompts in English and Spanish, and our other classes are getting them in English. We're working on those things and developing our teacher rubric, so that we can really identify and do some iterative reliability as to how our kids are doing in writing. That's our focus for our biggest need. We also are working on collaborative leadership, so we have an instructional leadership team. We have members from almost every single grade level, some members of 2 of them. We have our social worker, we have our special ed teacher, so we have a lot of people working together to help kids with diverse thoughts so that we can best meet the needs of all of our children. And lastly, we are working on climate and culture, coming together as a team and working collaboratively. Over the past couple years, my first year here, Hanson underwent a lot of change. A lot of teachers chose to leave. And second year, we brought on some teachers. This third year, we had a few because of budget cuts that left, and then we had a few that chose to leave. So it was pretty exciting. Our team is beginning to gel and solidify, and we're excited about those things. I'm trying to keep it brief. Do you have any questions for me?
I don't have a question, but I just want to say congratulations to you and your team for moving Hanson into improvement. So
Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And again, I apologize to our principals that we're ready to do the reports, but it's very important that we have the firm come in here because it pertains to the comprehensive annual financial report, and they've come a long way. So at this time, we're going to take a little turn and have move into the CAFR report, please.
Superintendent Abrego, President Rolla, members of the board. This is Cheryl Wallace. She's the partner on our financial audit, and
Just me.
just you, okay. So Cheryl has a presentation for you about the results of this year's annual financial audit, and I'll just go ahead and let her hand out that. Why don't I hand that out for you?
Sure.
And you can get started.
Good evening.
How you doing?
I'm going to give it a minute. As Eddie said, my name is Cheryl Wallace. I'm the partner on the engagement, and we're here to report back to the board the results of the financial statement audit. The document that was handed out, it's our viewpoints, and what that summarizes is our required communication that every auditor is to have with every governing body when an audit is performed. So I'm going to walk through the results and the required communications tonight. If you have any questions, please stop and let me know. So I would tell you that we're going to start on page 1. That's the engagement team. We put that in there so that if you have questions even after our presentation, if you'd like to reach out to us as your auditors, you can have our email address and phone number. The second page basically describes the objective and scope of our services. You did engage us to perform an independent financial statement audit, which also includes an audit of federal funds because you receive over $750,000 of federal funds. If you go to page 3, what's included in this document is the required communications, and then we also have some best practice suggestions, and then some of the reporting requirements that have been issued that the district going forward will have to adopt. So we kind of look at it as a foresight on financial reporting just to give you kind of what's out there. I'm going to skip to page 5. The way this is set up, we're going to go through the required communication. The left side is the auditor's required communication, and the right side is our response to it. I'm not going to read every word, but I'm going to go through it and summarize. We're responsible to perform our audit within generally accepted auditing standards, including governmental auditing standards, in compliance with uniform guidance. That's what covers your federal awards. We issued an unmodified report on the district's financial statements. We also issued an unmodified opinion over your federal funds. And we've got the required communications within this document. So we have 3 different opinions. We have the opinion over the financial statement, and then we also have opinions over your compliance with federal awards and controls over federal awards. So that was an unmodified opinion. It used to be called an unqualified opinion, clean opinion. That it was a good opinion. When you go to the next page, we're just supposed to let you know whether we planned and scoped the audit. We did so. We have an engagement letter that describes the scope of the audit, and that was dated May 16, 2016. We're to let you know about any qualitative aspects of accounting policies that are followed. The district was required to adopt a new standard. It added footnote disclosures related to fair values, and that's called GASB 72, and you adopted that. So you did have one change in your accounting standards, meaning you had additional disclosures that you had to disclose related to fair value.
Past that, there were no significant changes in accounting policies and procedures. We did not note any transactions that crossed periods or that lacked authoritative guidance. I'm on the next page. We're to let you know if there's any estimates used in your financial statements. So for most school districts, I would tell you the estimates are typically related to capital assets because you have to estimate how long those useful lives are. And you charge depreciation expense through the financial statements, kind of capturing the depreciation of that building equipment. And then you also, because the district is part and participates within PARA, we have that GASB 68 that was adopted last year related to that estimate of that pension liability. So those are your two estimates that you have in the financial statements. I would tell you those are very typical for school districts. We also are to highlight your footnote disclosures. So you have in note G in the CAFR, you have a detail of your long-term obligations, any debt commitments you have. In note I is the retirement plans. That's where the GASB 68 disclosure is with PARA. And then in note J, any commitments and contingencies outstanding. We're to let you know if we had any difficulties encountered during the audit. We did not have any significant difficulties encountered during the audit. Your team was doing and responding to other requests also while we were here during the audit, but we had no significant difficulties. We're to let you know if there's any corrected or uncorrected misstatements. What that really means, were there any adjustments? And so in the back of the book is also a copy of any of those adjustments. We did not have any significant adjustments. We just had some things that the district was working through, and we had one proposed adjustment for $11,000, so nothing significant. We're to let you know if we had any disagreements with management. We had none. We did ask management to sign a representation letter that basically says that when we asked for agreements, we received all those agreements we asked for. And a copy of that representation is also included in this communication in the back. So you see what was represented on behalf of the district. And we're to let you know if there was any other consultations needed outside of the audit, and there were none. If you turn the page. Did we have any other audit findings or issues? We had none. We just did assist helping with GASB 72 implementation and then the second year of that PARA estimate and disclosures. We'll let you know if there's any other matters. You have a lot of information in that CAFR. It's pretty big. And once you get past the financial statements and then the notes to the financial statements, you do have supplemental schedules that give you budget to actual information. That's what that section says. So I'm going to stop right there because that's all the required communication. Okay, with that, I'm going to move it forward. On page 10, just a few things that the district did go through this year. The district did successfully go through the accounting system conversion and included an HR module in that conversion. They did go through all the account coding through that conversion and improve that reporting. They have, and as we've talked about, they did implement GASB 72, which was a requirement. Now, as you go past page 11, that's our management letter. So on page 12, that's going to start some of our management letter discussion. And what this section is, as you recall earlier, we come and we do a financial statement audit, and then we do a audit of your federal awards. So when we come up with anything when we're looking at federal awards, we have two items of note. And this is also in the CAFR, but we're required to communicate it to governing body during this presentation. One of the things that happened with federal awards is there was new requirements out there called the Uniform Guidance, and that did change a lot of how people were to comply with federal funds and internal controls. And one of the things it did was you could be in compliance with your federal funds, but it required to have internal controls, written policies, and procedures in place. And when we were looking at some of the internal controls, there was one item in Title I grants with comparability tests. There was nothing wrong with the test. The district did it correctly. But when we looked at it, there wasn't a written policy and procedure over a formal review process. The review happened, but it wasn't in writing, so we couldn't you couldn't be totally in compliance with that new uniform guidance that says internal controls have to be written policies and procedures. So there was nothing wrong with the test. It was just an internal control improvement. Any questions over that? Okay, as we get to the next page, page 13, procurement. Again, when we were looking at Title I, we test your procurement. We have to look at procurement policies and make sure you're following all the procurement guidelines. You did, some of the tests say that if you have covered transactions over $25,000, you're required to go out and make sure and check what's called SAMs, which is an exclusion debarment vendors. So you cannot do business with any debarred vendors. You did check that SAMs list to make sure your vendors weren't debarred, but it just happened after the contract was signed. And so we're saying that it should be more on the front end. I want to be very clear. There was not a vendor that was debarred. We're just saying that the timing should be further up in the process rather than after the contract's signed. So you did not do any business with debarred vendors. There were no compliance requirements. We're just saying that that check should be earlier on in the process. Okay, on page 14. On page 14, this is just a best practice that says, as the district goes through, the uniform guidance is new. It's new to everybody out there. It's a transition implementation year. And the district has already implemented a significant amount of the uniform guidance, and we're just saying continue that process. On page 15, when we looked, and again, this is a best practice, the district probably should look at performing annual physical counts, inventory counts. When we were looking at the budgets, and again, you had a new system and you were loading budget information into that new system just to make sure that the revenue amounts are also loaded. You had a new system, the expenditures were loaded, and you were looking at budget to expenditure amounts, actual to budget, but just to also have all the revenue amounts included in that. And then there's a GASB 54 requirement that says you're supposed to look at all your financial reporting and all your special revenue funds and make sure that it meets the standard of a special revenue fund and how that fund's being reported. And last but not least, we're asking for the district to review their process for accruals to ensure that you're capturing all those invoices for amounts that you received right at year end. And those are just best practice comments. As you turn to page 16, the district is going to have 2 new standards to look at, and it is going to add more disclosures to your financial statements to the CAFR. One of them is called GASB 77, and that's tax abatements. So if you are in a county and they have abated taxes, that could mean that you have to also disclose those abatements in your financial statements. It's for transparency. That is anticipated to create some challenges with getting the information from the counties to be able to disclose into your financial report. Then you have GASB 75. Now, GASB 75, what we say is the sister to the pension disclosure. So because you're in para, you have the pension liability that you implemented last year. Now they have the second half of that implementation, because part of participating in para is you have a pension part and then you have a other post-employment part. And so that's your healthcare trust fund piece. So you will have to implement that in 2017-18 year. So that means putting on that liability just like you had to for GASB 68. So that will be impactful to the financial statements. And that's for 2017-18 year. But we wanted to let you know it's out there because GASB 68 was also a huge implementation and change in an estimate. That summarizes our report. Are there any questions?
For our board members, are there any questions that you may have?
I just have one question. The things you identified in here that we didn't do, not that they were being done incorrectly or anything, we've noted to the district that this is how we do it.
Mm-hmm.
How do we assure that it's being done without conducting another audit? I mean, is that something that we'll get information on during the course of time. I guess maybe that's a question for our district also, because they weren't there before.
Right. So I would tell you that there are processes in place. Sandy, do you want to answer that?
Well, not knowing which one specifically, it's one of the struggles that we deal with every day. Specifically the SAMs, the one on the Department of the Vendors. Part of the trouble is by the time the finance office knew about it, they had already signed and entered into an agreement with that contractor. And so even though it was just a couple days, we hadn't done business with them yet, we hadn't paid any payments, we had entered a contract before we had checked the SAM's records on the department. So it's one of those things of to continue to educate all of our employees about the importance of doing that, because we went through and we checked SAMs on every vendor, regardless if they were federal funded or not, if they're over the $25,000 threshold. And we still had some that when we checked them, the process had started before the checking. So we continue to talk about how we can continue to train and move forward. And obviously the annual audits are every year. So that's, since they're part of the federals, it's part of their required testing that they'll do year after year after year.
And it will be I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
It will be a follow-up point for next year. So next year, it would be reported back to you whether it was implemented.
Okay.
Because we have talked about tweaking that process.
Yeah, we've talked about the training so that our employees can help us, because sometimes, like in this case, we don't know about it until it's too late, and we don't want to have these keep happening, and how can we protect the district in its entirety? So, and I think that response is written somewhere. I don't know if it's in this report, but it's
written in the CAFR
in
responses.
part,
Yeah. So the responses are in the CAFR, but annually you'll have a financial statement audit because you have federal funds, so you're required to, and the auditor is required to follow up on those two items and report back to the governing body.
So that will be in next year's CAFR too. You'll see
Yeah.
the response there.
Okay.
Did that answer your question?
It did.
Do we have any other questions from our board?
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you so
you.
much. And I think we're back on track, so if you don't mind, I thought this report was very important because we want to make sure we did give them sufficient time. For our principals, administrators, we're ready to move on. We do have Central School here. Are you prepared to? Okay. If you want to come up here, then we'll have all the elementary schools done, and then we'll start with our middle schools. Thank you so much.
Good evening, everybody. I wanted to apologize for my tardiness. I had a PTO meeting and I thought I could get in both places at the same time, and turns out I was not successful at that, so I apologize. I do have a folder for you with our presentation as well, if I can bring it up to you. Thank you, Mike.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
So my name is Sheila Burke, and I'm currently the principal at Central Elementary School. Inside your folder tonight, you'll find on the left side the PowerPoint presentation that I've prepared this evening. And then on the right side, you'll find our welcome letter for families, as well as our Central's vision and mission and our core beliefs. So in our first slide, we have Central's mission, which is listed up there for you, and then Central's vision as well. Our core beliefs at Central, we operate off of 4, which are students first, high expectations, relationships, and equity. And we believe all the work that we do at Central comes back to those core beliefs that we share with our community. My objective tonight is to make sure that I'll speak about Central's accountability clock and our unified improvement plan, and include our next steps. So Central's currently on an accountability clock. We're in year 3 of that. So according to CDE, we are designated under priority improvement, which is the orange color band. In there is just information about how we got on the clock that I shared with our family at our back community. Under Central's Unified Improvement Plan, the purpose of that is to make sure that we're meeting the Educational Accountability Act of 2009 and making sure that we're providing quality instruction and education for all of our learners. Under our improvement plan, we had our UIP process that we've gone through. In 2005, Central had a TEL survey that came out from the state. They talked with all of our staff members, students, families, and through that survey, we identified areas that we were not performing well in, and then they helped us to develop our next steps. So when we built our Unified Improvement Plan, there's 8 quality indicators that we looked at using the TEL survey, and from there we developed 3 of them that we were going to focus on our campus last year. One of those is Standard 5 under leadership, with the 2 specific elements of building capacity in our building and communication. Standard 6, we identified climate and culture, and we're going to work on making sure that our learning environment is inclusive, that we have a safe and orderly environment for all of our students, that we're meeting behavioral expectations, and that there's trust, respect incorporated into our daily lives. The other standard that we're focusing on is effective educators, making sure that we have high quality staff and that we're supporting and restating our staff members. Our action steps that Central has put in place to make sure that we're meeting those indicators is that under Standard 5, we're making sure that we have clear processes for all systems in our building. We have listed out everything from morning arrival to dismissal, how adults enter our campus, how students exit, all the way down to the nitty-gritty so that everybody's clear about our work. I have researched along with our leadership team, private sectors. We've looked at Google, we've looked at Apple, and we've looked at Disney, because we recognize not only are we here for education, but we're also a service and a business, and we provide our service of education. So we want to look to those who are doing this really well to get ideas of how we can better improve our practices. Under climate and culture, we have included high expectations. We are focusing on customer service, making sure that we remember who our customers are at all times, from the office to our teachers when they're greeting our students, and our families when they enter in for the school day and when they exit. We've implemented a new school-wide behavior system so that all of our family members can respond to our students and be able to support their needs, both positive and negative. We've incorporated bi-monthly PEP assemblies, and then we have a full up and running equity committee that focuses on student data. Under Standard 7 educator effectiveness, we've looked at comparing, sorry, my print is a little small. Connective processes for professional learning, which is our PLCs. We've restructured those to make sure that they're connected to our early release days, that they're focused on student data, and that we're meeting the needs of our campus and looking in our schedule so that it's all student-centered, which comes back to our beliefs. The other part that we're looking on is we've added a 2-teacher model with our partnership from Denver University, and we've incorporated our student teachers in 4th and 5th grade, because right now that's the grade levels that we have the most Tier 2 and Tier 3 supports. That way we have trained teachers who are going to expedite our learning by offering small groups at a rapid pace to close those gaps. I've included our data up to this point. So under our school performance framework for our 15-16 school year, we received 37.7 points out of 100. Our goal is to make sure that we are getting to 50. If we can get to 42 points, that'll take us out of this color band, and you can see that we're really close. So in our data, which I've included in your PowerPoint there, 50% of our students in grades 3 through 5 will score proficient on our state assessments as our campus goal, and then 50% of students in each grade level will be at or above benchmark and STAR. In our grade levels, currently we have 3 grade levels that are already at that mark. In October, I haven't put up our progress monitoring for December because we're still progress monitoring. They'll be done tomorrow. So we're going to, for second semester, flood grade levels that we know that we're not meeting those percentages with our reading interventionist, our coach, and restructuring some of those literacy and math blocks to make sure that we're moving our student data. So tonight I was here to speak about our improvement strategies for Central. Do you have any questions for me?
So it's the same question I've been asking all evening. So you're gonna do, we have goals during the year. You're gonna evaluate them during the year, at the end of the year. Who's gonna be responsible for that evaluation? Because in your presentation, we say we, and some of the other schools have said we have self-assessment team, we have peer assessment teams, we have all different types of assessment teams. So your assessment team is the same?
Our assessment team is our back community that I report out to each month, our leadership team that I meet with bi-weekly, and then our PLC committees, which is all of our grade levels that we meet bi-weekly as well, or bi-monthly, I'm sorry. So we report out the data all the time to make sure that we're moving those and making real-time adjustments to meet our students' needs. That includes professional development, structures and systems inside, as well as our master schedule.
And the only reason I ask these questions is because I want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to make sure we can support you in what needs to be done. We can support the superintendent so he can make sure you get what you need done, and that goes for all of the schools. Because sometimes there's roadblocks in the way that we don't see, we don't hear about. And I explained earlier, you weren't here, the Unified Improvement Plan, this is the second one I've looked at. I've seen the one from last year, now I see the one from this year. And they seem pretty similar. There's things to do, things we need to get done. There's just no time frame or who's gonna do what by when, and what are our goals early on compared to later on in the year? Or do we wait until the end of the year to make adjustments to what needs to happen? So
Yes.
those are just my questions.
In our full-length UIP, we review that during our leadership meetings once a month. And I've assigned each staff member from the leadership team part of our UIP that they're responsible for collecting the evidence for, reporting out to during our early release days to our campus, so that it's not just dependent on me, but we're all working together to better improve our campus. With it, the thing that I added to our UIP this year that was not in there last year and is very similar is our student achievement. We didn't have any specific academic goals in there, and so I put those in. By year 2, my goal is that we're at 90%. For this year, we'll be at 50 because right now we're in the low 20s. So I wanted to make sure it was realistic for us, but we chunked it out for year 1 and then for year 2.
Thank you.
I have a quick question. Dr. Abrego, you sent us the UIP for each school, Friday's updates for us to read. And
I'm sorry, what was the question or the concern?
you sent us the UIP for each school, Friday updates, so it gave us a chance to read them.
Right.
But my question is, to Ms. Burke is, after reading Central's, and you spoke about standards, Central doesn't have, from what I've seen, it wasn't done or is past due on that calendar clock. At the, I believe it's the second page of each school have a different clock measured that I was reading. Some had past due, not done yet, and some was in gray, some was in red, some was in green. So my question is, standard up there, is that considered the same as the UIP I read for Central?
Yes, it should be.
Okay.
And I'll go back and look because I'm not sure what was past due, but I'll make sure if there's anything past due that we've updated those components.
Thank you.
Sure.
Good. Any other questions from our board? No? Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Okay, we're going on to the middle schools, and we have Adams.
Good evening, President Rolla, distinguished members of the board, Superintendent Abrego. I was told to keep this very short, so I shall. We have 3 bullet points that we identified. Thank you, Monica. Leadership, and school leadership will continue to function as a learning organization focused on shared responsibility for student success in a rigorous cycle of teaching and learning. Culture and climate was the second standard identified. The school will fully function as an effective learning community that supports a climate conducive to performance excellence for students and staff. And our third bullet or standard was educator effectiveness. Our school leadership will continue to develop a high-quality professional staff that focuses on professional learning, supervision, evaluation, and commitment to continuous improvement. You hear that from everybody, so really quick, let me elaborate just briefly on each point. So leadership. At our school, what our drive has been more of a shared leadership responsibility. So with our instructional leadership team, my drive or my focus has been put teachers in front of teachers to lead training whenever possible. So you heard President Rolla asking about teacher input. And as a teacher of 15 years, there's a lot of expertise there to tap into. So that's something that our instructional leadership team focuses on, is putting teachers in front of teachers to lead some of that work. Another piece is shared decision-making processes. So in that instructional leadership team within, I want to ensure that the voice of the teacher, the paraprofessional, and parents are heard within that instructional leadership team, so we are better informed about decisions we make for our school and community. Our second point that I'd pointed to was culture and climate. So at our school, it's been a challenge to get started with that equity team. I am proud to say that we have been using our early release days throughout the school year for equity work to examine race, culture, and those impacts that it can have on instruction and our students in everyday lives. Another piece that we've been focusing on has been the PBIS. This is Positive Behavior Support Systems, and we've been realigning the mission and vision to support more of a values-based discipline and student within our school. That's been all new this year. I don't have any current data to say it's working, but I do know that when you put something in, it takes 2 to 3 years to make it cement into a student culture. My last bullet, educator effectiveness, professional learning through our plan time. So we have a 90-minute block. Half of that time is for professional learning. Literacy focus, that's in line with our district. So we've been emphasizing before, during, and after reading strategies. Writing will be the focus of this second semester. And we also have a group of 14 teachers participating with Constructing Meaning, which is in alignment with our district. Data teams focusing on differentiation, very simplistic. So if an assignment is done and you collect the work, we split those into 3 different groups. This group has it, this group not so much, sort of, and that group not at all. It's simple. It doesn't require everyone to fill out a piece of paper. You can grade a paper and you can split that out and address those misconceptions easily. And then I listed as an additional educator effectiveness, you sent a group of restorative justice, some of our staff to restorative justice this last summer. So that's been another piece that we've been pushing out through our school, through all staff. So it's been classified, have been part of that, as well as teachers. It seems to be proving quite successful. I don't have data measures on that yet. And getting back to timeframes, I know, Timio, you've asked about those. You'll see those more elaborate within the full UIP. When is it going to be finished and who's responsible for it. One thing that is a struggle on those this year, you asked how you can help. I asked that we approve, hopefully you approve a budget under the direction of Superintendent Abrego as early as possible. I was fully staffed for the first time this past Thursday. It's been a struggle to hire our people. So I finally got all the people in the right place just this last Thursday. It has a ripple effect in the hiring and everything else. So that's all. Do you have any questions?
I don't have any questions, but I would like to comment on your comment about the restorative justice stuff.
Yes.
You know, I've talked to a lot of community members there, and whatever it is you're doing there, they're happy with the results. They're not, you know, we're not where we need to be yet, but it's a whole lot better climate in that school and on that school property in the past year. So, you know, thank you for reporting back on that. I had asked Lloyd to come and give a report back, but for whatever reason he hasn't been able to, because the district did spend some monies and send some people to that restorative justice. That was actually, I believe, doing some good things for the district. So thank you on that.
I appreciate hearing that. I'm a firm believer of everybody, so that's not training for just teachers. That's for everyone and anyone in the school system.
And I do appreciate your comment on the budget approval. Hopefully we get off our duffs and make things happen quicker.
Thank you. I appreciate
rather than
it.
later.
Any other questions I can answer? Thank you.
Thank you, and I know it's getting close to our start time for our board meeting, so I guess I would have to ask the board president, do you want me to stop here? We have 3 schools left, or do you want to start our board meeting, official board meeting at 6:30?
Well, we can go ahead and continue.
Okay.
Because it's nothing new, us starting late every time we're in executive session.
Right, we're the middle school, Kearney Middle School.
Thank you, President Rowland. We will try to keep it within the 3-minute confined time that they gave us. Superintendent, Dr. Abrego, President Rolla, distinguished members of the board. My name is BJ and I'm at Kearney, and this is Tom. And he's my assistant principal, and I'd like to share with you what Kearney is doing. On our Unified Improvement Plan from 2015-16, we had leadership, culture and climate, and educator effectiveness. We've kind of banked leadership to the bottom since Tom and I are no longer rookies in our first year, and we kind of planted our feet solid, built a very dynamic administrative team and instructional team. So what we've done, after looking at the data from this year's school performance framework, we noticed that best first instruction has got to take a priority at the front. And with that, these are look-fors that we expect to see in every single classroom when we go in. These are our non-negotiables. There should be a content language objectives. Students should know what they're doing and should know what they have to master by the end of that unit. And there should be an exit ticket after every unit or lesson that tells the teacher, these kids got it, these are almost there, these missed it, I need to go back and reteach those kids that missed it. We also have a gradual release. One thing that we notice that we have, as you get higher up in the grades, teachers tend to start lecturing more. We want to see more of a workshop model, 12 to 15 minutes max on whole group instruction to give the kids the expectations for that lesson, and then more of a workshop model where they break up and peers are working with peers in collaboration to meet the goal of that objective. The academic language is huge. We have 54% ELL students, science and social studies. That academic language is very difficult. They have a language barrier as it is coming into the school. So we want to see the academic language posted in each room for those lessons and an active word wall on words that they have already studied up on the wall so students could use as a resource through each and every lesson. We want to make sure that teachers are meeting the students' needs. Therefore, through that exit ticket, they must stop that next day with kids that did not get it and reteach until the students understand what it is the teacher was expected of them. Do you want to do climate and culture, Tom? The last one, before I move on, is the differentiated instruction. In each classroom, you have kids that are 2 or 3, 4 grade levels behind, and kids that are 2 or 3 grade levels above. We dismantled 2 of our computer labs and put 4 computers in each and every classroom to have a computer station, so students that are above can go back there and do research and more challenged work. Students that are behind could use stuff like RAS Kids or other interventions to help them catch up with the rest of the class. But the teacher is responsible for that differentiated instruction and modifying the assignments for students that have special disabilities, and also breaking down the language barriers for students that are ELL.
So our second standard revolves around climate and culture at Kearney Middle School. We know as a school, since this is our second year as administrators, staff retention and creating that trust and respect with our staff is really what's going to make the difference in order to meet the needs of our students. So therefore, we have a focus on creating that environment where students are eager to come to our school because they have built the relationships with teachers. The teachers have been there for years and they have exceeded in their instruction and meeting student needs. It's that positive attitude. We have started holding academic assemblies for our students, recognizing the students for their growth, recognizing students for their achievements, recognizing students for just being outstanding individuals with positive characteristics. So really developing the whole child. We also have created data walls in all classrooms. We created the climate and culture where students know where they are, and we have our teachers setting goals with our students so that they know where they need to get. It's really having our students take ownership over the work so that they can really be empowered. And the last thing, as I believe one of our fellow administrators mentioned earlier, research supports that community relations is really what makes the biggest impact. And having parental involvement and people coming into our buildings and supporting is really what's going to make the difference in our students and really tie everything that we're doing from 8 to 3:15 at school and having that support from after school as well, just so that we're always developing our students 24 hours a day and having that partnership with our families. And that's our climate and culture.
Another thing I'd like to add to the climate and culture, we had our first annual turkey trot this year, and we had a big turnout. We had over 95 kids from each grade level running in the turkey trot, and they had a fun day that day. We blended that with Miles, the mascot from the Broncos that came out. We're trying to focus on more fun activities, but tie it into the curriculum on what the expectations are. Going to our third standard of effective educator, we've instilled data-driven instruction. I thank the board for allowing me to attend Relay up in New York. As a first-year principal, it gave me a lot of ideas on how you teach from bell to bell, how students are expected to act and perform in class. And we've implemented a lot of Bambrick Santoyo's strategies that were given to us. We selected the strategies that fit the climate that we're serving. We started last year at the spring with constructing meaning and found that our kids were able to write 2 to 3 times more with the strategies that constructing meaning comes with. So this year, we made it mandatory that every teacher teaching at Kearney be trained in the professional development of constructed meaning. In some of the classrooms that I was in just today, teachers shared that students are no longer having to use those sentence starters and frames because it's already caught on and they know how to start writing from the get-go. We've also tied that in with CU's Collaborative Strategic Reading Program. That's where our scores were low. And that brings in that science and social studies, academic language that teaches students how to clunk words that they don't understand. What are some of the strategies when I get to a word I don't understand? How do I break that down? It teaches them in collaboration how to find the gist of what it is they're reading. What is this really talking about? Our science teachers have started attending Gizmo, and we started building leaders within the school, like Mr. Schwartz touched on, where our teachers lead some of the professional development. I think that's all. Do you have any questions for us?
No questions from the board? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We have 2 schools left. Okay, we have Adams City High School.
Good evening, Dr. Abrego, Superintendent Abrego, President Rolla, distinguished members of the board. ACH's UIP major improvement strategies for Standard 1 is standards in instructional planning. The school will consistently implement a curriculum that is aligned with Colorado academic standards and consistently ensures rigorous, effective instructional planning. With that said, we use Bambrick's and Toya's Understanding by Design and planning from the reverse model. So teachers actually create the assessment that students are supposed to take at the end and plan from that. So they always teach with test in hand. We also implemented common formative assessments. So teachers are planning together, they're putting those assessments together, and they're learning from one another based on the assessments that they're giving. So through our PLC models, our professional learning communities, teachers come together and they look at the exams and look at the units and determine, what is effective and what has been going well in your class, what has not been going so well. What instructional strategies are you using that are effective and which ones are you using that are ineffective? And they use that through Bambrick's and Toya's data cycles. And so what they do is they look at their assessment and instead of looking at the end and saying, what did our kids not get? They look at the test and they analyze and say, did this question really ask kids what they're supposed to do? Or if it did, why did your kids perform better than your kids? And what instructional strategies or pedagogy did you use in the classroom to ensure that your kids met that standard? And so teachers are learning from another while they're teaching the students. Another one is standard number 5, leadership. The school leadership will consistently ensure that the school functions as a learning organization focused on shared responsibility for student success and a rigorous cycle of teaching and learning. So through that, we use the standard coaching model. Coaches are not an evaluative piece for teachers. Coaches are specifically for them and increasing their instructional practices in the classroom. Administration is off hands when it comes to the instructional ideas or coaching to teachers because we want them to feel comfortable going to a teacher and taking risks in the classroom so students can learn, rather than an administrator going in the classroom, talking to a teacher and say, I'd like to see more of this. What's going to happen is the teacher's going to try to do it exactly the way you say it because you're the administrator. Rather, I would go to the coach and say, please work with Mr. or Miss So-and-so on some instructional strategies on language objectives in the classroom. And that coach would go in there and work with that person, and then I would come back in through my cycle and see if it was implemented and if it was effective. We also use a model classroom or a lab classroom that we just implemented, so now teachers can have the opportunity to go see master teachers in the classroom, and if they want to take a risk or try something new, they can see it from a specific instructor that is practicing in that strategy and get some ideas. We like to use distributive leadership, so we like to give people opportunities to take leadership roles within the building and take a group of teachers or a group of students and try to make the school better in any means necessary. The The next one is culture and climate. The school will consistently function as an effective learning community and fully support a climate conducive to performance and excellence for students and staff. One of the things we're really focused on is the matriculation of our graduates in post-secondary, whether it be college or career, making sure that we are increasing students' personal goals. We have finished a safe and orderly environment. That was one of our strategies before. We have completed that. I believe Adams City High School students feel very safe in their school. We're working on trust and respect within the building, making sure that we are very transparent in everything we do, that kids are always looked at as first. Everything's around kids. All decisions are made about kids. All assessments will be written in a DOK 3 level so that we are increasing rigor in the classroom and that we are trying to align those assessments to where kids are going to see on PARCC, SAT, any other exams that they may be entering into later in the future, whether it be AP, CLEP, AccuPlace, or any of those other exams that are going to be the gatekeepers to their future. We want to make sure that we're aligning our test questions so that the kids have those strategies when they take part in those. That is ours in a can. If there's any questions, I can answer those at this point.
Questions from board members?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And we have one more, Lester Arnold.
Good evening, esteemed board members. I'm going to start really quick. We have quite a few things going on, as you know. But Mr. Rolla, when you look at ours, we do have benchmarks with times and dates, and I'll start with 4C1. Benchmark by August 2016, ensure that all parents, guardians have participated in orientation with their child. We've completed that. And in fact, tonight we are having 20 families join us for an orientation that we're now taking in from Adams City High School. So we are complete on all those. Our big thing is expectations and our response to intervention plan, which for our children, many of our children were disenfranchised at middle school. They've dropped out, they had babies, for whatever reason. They came to us below grade level, so every child at Lester Arnold has a reading and a math class online. They start at their grade level, and we move them all the way up to 11th grade so they can access and perform well on PARCC, and everything else that we get is based on 11th grade level. The Discover program, which they're learning tonight, is what we do for our behavior piece, which is part of what we're doing, as well as our staff development piece, because of a grant that you guys approved that I rewrote, that Mr. Thompson had originally written. Our teachers are paid for staff development at $27.95 an hour every Monday, and so every Monday we have continuous staff development. As you also, we use restorative justice as our other piece of our discovery model. As you are aware, we've gone up to almost 2.5 points at this rate. We are in improvement at this rate. We will be a performance school in two more years. We're right on track. Flip too many pages here. Yeah. As I can continue to go down, you know our partnership with Bimbo Bakeries, and now going on to waste management. We do have internship programs for all of our seniors, and all of our seniors on our Work Keys assessment, which is workforce readiness. We're at 92% of our senior graduates are prepared to go into the workforce. And we're very, very, very pleased about that. I did bring the new, which you should have just received, and we're quite proud of, and you'll see it on every wall at Lester Arnold. I know so because I put it up myself. But we love being an AEC improvement. As you know, we're at 51.34, making us about almost 8.5 points away from going to performance, and that'll make us a top school. Is there anything else I may share with you, or we go on?
Good job. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We're very proud. You know, this is the shortest time I've ever talked about Lester Arnold in my life. Anyway, good night.
We just want to thank all the principals for doing their presentations, and thank you for allowing us to get them done today so that we can move forward with their process. Thank you.
Okay, we'll take a 5-minute break and go get a drink or do whatever you have to do. Pretty. Is Monica over there?
Yeah, she is.
All right, everybody ready?
I'm ready.
Call this meeting to order on Tuesday, December 13, 2016 at 6:49. Can we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Can I have roll call, Monica, please?
Mr. Achuleta?
Here.
Mr. Dreiling?
Excused.
Excuse.
Mrs. Quintana?
Here.
Mr. Rolla?
Here.
Mr. Thomas?
Here.
I need a motion for the approval of the minutes on November 22nd, 2016. So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none, can we have roll call, Monica?
Mr. Achuleta?
Aye.
Mrs. Quintana?
Aye.
Mr. Rolla?
Aye.
Mr. Thomas?
Aye.
I need a motion for the approval of November 30th, 2016 minutes. So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Have roll call, Monica?
Mr. Achuleta?
Aye.
Mrs. Quintana?
Aye.
Mr. Rolla?
Aye.
Mr. Thomas?
Aye.
I need a motion for the approval of the agenda. So moved.
Second.
Is there a discussion? Hearing none, could I have roll call, Monica, please?
Mr. Achuleta?
Aye.
Mrs. Quintana?
Aye.
Mr. Rolla?
Aye.
Mr. Thomas?
Aye.
We will now move on to recognitions and celebrations. Dr. Abrego?
Yes, thank you, President Rolla. We have 2 recognitions. We want to have the principal of DuPont Elementary come up here, please, Ms. Pat Almeida, and she's going to tell us about the great public school team, and also is going to recognize one of her parent liaisons. Am I correct?
Yes, that is correct, Dr. Abrego. Good evening, President Rolla, distinguished board members, and Dr. Abrego. The Great Public Schools team was born out of the idea that every staff member is a leader, and among us are leaders that are willing to learn the theory of how to lead, develop the protocols that allow us to lead change, and evaluate the effectiveness of change within school systems. DuPont Elementary School has spent the past year developing a leadership team that keeps students at the forefront of all decision-making, respects all ideas while feeling empowered to share different opinions and feelings. They stay focused on the topic of student achievement. They actively listen for understanding and seek to understand the opinions of others first. They commit to attend all meetings, and there are a lot of meetings. Are there not? We build on one another's strengths, and we give each other credit. We treat everyone with dignity and respect. We engage in problem-solving conversations. We make decisions with integrity and value one another's time. Through these norms, the GPS team has been able to lead their respective teams through a process of data analysis and planning that prioritizes student needs, establishes student goals, selects research-based instructional strategies, and determines results indicators for the next instructional cycle. The members of this team give an hour a week to meet as a leadership team to evaluate the effectiveness of the layers of support during GO time, which is growth opportunity time, mentioned earlier in the UIP summary, and then they guide their teams through the process of constant refinement to better address the needs of our students. It is with great pride that I introduce the DuPont Great Public Schools team, or GPS as they are fondly known through the school. Most of my members are not here tonight. We've had several evening events, but I would like to go ahead and recognize them by name if they aren't here. We have Kelleen Atchison in kindergarten, Veronica Rodriguez in first grade, Pauline Logan is our second grade teacher, Jordan Peschke is a third grade teacher and our new teacher mentor, Kate Harrison, third grade, Carissa Freeman, fourth grade, Judd Stutzman, fifth grade, Janice Schoolcraft, special education teacher, Dee Bench, literacy specialist, Dina Valadez, assistant principal, Courtney Rangel, English language development coach, Thelma Valdez, Go Time support and classified representative, and Kylie Dornbush, child psychologist. It is this team of individuals who lead the rest of our staff on a journey to excellence for all students. Do you want them to come up? Would you like for them to come up?
Yes,
Okay,
please.
all
Come
right.
up and
Hey, team.
take a picture.
It's just you. It's okay. That's all right. You can take this back to the rest of, do you want us up here then? Okay.
Or does anyone of them have something to say?
Would you like to add too?
Come on, Kate. You know, the work is never ending in elementary school as in all aspects of education. And it's been a pleasure to be able to be given the opportunity to be involved in the changes that happen at DuPont. And I think it's created a lot of buy-in with our staff. And it's been amazing just to be involved in the changes that we're seeing happening with kids who constantly have been struggling, who now are saying, oh, I get it, or, oh, I've never been able to read those kinds of words before. So it's pretty inspiring and amazing. So it's been great.
Is anyone else? Okay, all right, let's go down and take a picture. Just couldn't get the good signature.
In addition to our leadership team, there are other individuals that advocate and develop the different parts of the multi-tiered layers of support that our students benefit from on a daily basis. Isabel Garcia is DuPont's parent liaison. She is constantly advocating for students to make sure that they have school supplies so they can actively participate in learning. Their health needs are met so that students attend school regularly. Holiday gifts have been appearing everywhere and are stashed everywhere in the school. And parents are informed as they support their students at home. She takes a district lead by chairing DAC, which plays a critical role in educating and empowering our families to create change. Isabel develops trusting and strong relationships with our parents and is the go-to person that our staff relies on to make sure that our parents are aware of their students' progress throughout the year. She facilitates collaboration between teachers and the families. Most recently, in collaboration with Jesse Martinez, she was instrumental in developing 2 Parents as Reading Partners Night, which gave our parents the opportunity to learn about what is READ Act and what implication does it have for their student. They now know the expectations that their students need to achieve through the support by the teachers at DuPont, and they receive the strategies they need to support their students at home. Isabel is another great example of teaching and learning at DuPont Elementary School, and it was with great honor that we recognize her tonight. Isabel?
Want to go down and take a picture?
You want to say something?
Did she want to say something?
No. All righty, she just wants to be recognized.
Nothing to say?
Go ahead.
I just want to say that I enjoy it tremendously being a part of the district and especially being a part of DuPont Elementary. It's been amazing. I've been a parent liaison for 5 years, and I am one of the very few people that I could say that I love coming to work every day and doing my job. Thank you.
Thank you for allowing us to recognize DuPont this evening.
And Board President, those are the two recognitions we have for today.
Okay, moving on to, there are no audience comments, so we'll go right back to Dr. Abrego, Superintendent's report.
Good. At this time, we have two individuals that will give us a brief report. We have a report from Ms. Rotella on the mid-year fiscal report.
Good evening. Give Monica a chance. So this is the time of year where you have the audited financial statements, and we know the October count, and so we're going to talk about what happened at the end of last year based on what we were projecting. Thank you. Versus, and then moving that forward, what that impact looks like for this current year. So as we go through the slides, these are right off the audited financial statements. What our total revenue, expenditures, other sources are, beginning fund balance and ending fund balance. And so in this example, the general fund had an ending fund balance of $14,900,399,000. In the audited financial statements, there are other funds that make up the general fund that are different than what we budget as funds. For example, when we adopt budgets for the Colorado Preschool Program. We adopt a budget for the Risk Management Fund and the General Fund. And those are collapsed as one fund when we report our audited financial statements. So they're considered sub-funds. Our grant funds, those are always a zero fund balance. And the Food Service Fund ended the year at $733. Fees supported at $96,000. Our athletic fund had $5,000 left in it, and our bond redemption fund had $4,900, and then the non-major capital projects had $5.9 million. A big portion of that is the $3 million from the proceeds of the land sale on that Rosemary property site. So one of the questions that you probably get asked, I get asked, is why do we need to have fund balance? It's also referred to as reserves, so they're interchangeable and mean the same thing. The number one reason is to cover your cash flows. And so under our current reserves in the general fund of $14.4 million, this would cover approximately 3 months' worth of expenditures in the general fund. However, not all of those resources are available, and not all of those resources are cash. If you look at just what is available resources, you have about a month to a month and a half worth of, reserves that can go towards expenditures. They're an emergency resource in the event it's needed. There's uncertainty, specifically at the legislative level. You have a board policy that directs 5% to go into reserves. It's also an evidence of your financial condition, especially if you're out in the bond market to sell bonds for capital construction. So back when we adopted the 2016-17 budget, we're making some assumptions and guessing where we think revenue and expenditures are going to come in. And so when we adopted the budget, we adopted a budget expecting $11.6 million to be in our fund balance. And that has grown to 14.3. And so what I've shown in this graph is the adopted budget column and the actual fund balance off the audited financial statements. And then there's a difference column. And you'll see that there's some differences between the restricted of Tabor and the board designated. And some of these differences are you've had some personnel changes where you had some long-term contracts, and those contracts, the long-term contracts had to be designated in your reserves. As those went away, so did those reserves, and they also shifted down. And so while your reserves we were off by 2.7, your undesignated actually grew by 3.9 because of those releasing of those contracts or long-term debt, which is required by Tabor. So here's a picture of our reserves in the general fund over the last 6-7 years. The bar represents your total reserves, while the red line represents what was the required level of reserves, or restricted. So that's both Tabor and your board policies. And you can see that in 13-14, there was a planned spend down of the reserves by the board, and it has gradually worked its way back upwards. So with that information from the audited financial statements, we'll now look forward into the adopted budget for 16-17, so this school year's budget. And so the first thing that makes up our school budget is we have to know what are the number of students that we're going to get funding for. And so based on our October 1 count, our actual FTE, which is a full-time equivalent, so not all students count as a 1, we had a 7,054.5 actual FTE count. We projected 7,058, so we were 3.5 students off. However, actually I'm not ready to go there yet. So here is a 20-year graph of what pupil enrollment has looked like for Adams 14. And it's had a stable increase. It's been up, it's been down, and so there's lots of hills and valleys throughout this line. Over 20 years, we are currently in a downward cycle. In the state of Colorado, when a school district starts experiencing declining enrollment, you start getting funded for, sometimes it's referred to as phantom students or ghost students. They do an averaging so that you don't have to adjust your budgets rapidly. It creates a smoothing mechanism so that you can gradually make adjustments. For example, it's usually the 1st of November by the time we have the formal October count numbers. You already have staff on contracts. It's hard to make those adjustments. This is partially designed to allow school boards to plan your budgets as your enrollment has declining over years. So with declining enrollment in place, you're actually going to get a benefit due to students that really aren't here, but we get funding for. So these are our funded pupil counts over the last 4 years. It does not include the Colorado preschool funded count. Those aren't counted in our average. And so when you take a 4-year average or 5-year average, we have 6,653 students that will be funded on versus the 6,622 that's the actual. So when we fast forward that and we take that average of 6,653 plus the Colorado preschool FTE, we'll get funding for 7,125.8 students. This is 71.3 students greater than what the actual bodies. So that's what's known as, you'll hear legislators refer to these students as phantom students because they're not really truly students or ghost students. But this is that funding mechanism that comes into place to help support school districts equalize your budget. For us, those 71 students will equal approximately $550,000 of additional funding for this school year. So I wanted to review the use of reserves because this board did appropriate the use of reserves in your adopted budget. And while the reserves have increased by 2.7 more than expected, we actually appropriated reserves of 7.6. So we appropriated the 4.2 that was in the planned, when we go back to the budget column. We adopted this $4.2 million that was the board designated and this 3.4 as undesignated. Knowing that under board policy, you could not spend this amount without board approval. So the only amount that the board approved to be spent was $1,825,000 at the time we adopted the budget. And those items were as follows. It was the benchmark literacy curriculum, the expansion of the induction program, professional development that goes along with the new curriculum. We had curriculum mapping at 912 and innovation planning at all grade levels for 180, and that package is worth $1,825,000. So now, remember when we use reserves, it's the same as using our spending account at home. Once we spend it, that source of revenue is gone. So the items that we identified to be used in here were a one-time source, so they didn't have a continuous life because you don't have an identified revenue stream at this point to continue this next year. So that's why these were targeted to be one-time uses of those resources. Since we've adopted the budget, there have been some other items that the board has approved for a total of $2.6 million has been spent. We've had the employment settlements that have gone through, summer student workers for an additional $774 on top of the $1,825,000. So to date, we have spent $2.6 million of that $7.4 million reserves. So looking at the undesignated reserve from the audited financial statements, which was 7.3 or 7.4 rounded million dollars, you would have $4.8 million in your undesignated reserves based on the year-end audited financial statements. So some other things that are impacting the general fund as we move forward. Another item on the agenda tonight is to set your property tax mill levy. We get notified from the county in August, some preliminary numbers, and we get the final numbers the 1st of December. And one of the items that is in the county numbers of property tax, which Cheryl, the partner from the CPA firm, was talking about, is there's a $711,000 abatement. That what that means is that when we set our property taxes last year, you set the property taxes expecting $711,000 worth of revenue to be collected from property that has now since been forgiven, and we didn't collect property tax. Had we known that a year ago, we would have adjusted our collections of property taxes to reflect that. The state law allows you the opportunity to now collect that this next year, which is called an abatement. Last year we had 1.5 million, and this year we have 711. Both, we've had 2 years in a row of a significantly high dollar amount that's coming from abatements from the previous year. So with that coming in, it's a one-time source of revenue. It will also increase funding to the general fund. When we get to the agenda item later tonight, you're going to notice that the assessed valuation for the district has declined for this year, while many other districts are seeing an increase. Our values are in a decrease situation. And while that has no direct impact on our funding, because we're funded under the School Finance Act, what that's doing is shifting funding from local property taxes to the state of Colorado's equalization. So your pie is still the same size. They've just changed the slice of the pies. The size of those pie slices. And then the funding from the 71.3 students due to averaging is going to add $556,853. So I've summarized it. Under the School Finance Act, when we adopted the budget, we expected our School Finance Act to generate $55.5 million. Based on our property tax assessment, the abatement that's coming in, and our averaging of students, I'm anticipating that to increase by $1.2 million for this school year. Now, there's a caution that needs to take into place because we budgeted $55,000 to come in as abatement. That's our normal abatements, but you're getting a one-time increase of $656,000. And there's no guarantee, nor would I expect this to be an ongoing revenue source. So we have to be careful as we go forward that we don't become reliant on $700,000 in revenue that most likely will not be here next year. So when you look at this, you probably have about $650,000 that's it's a one-time temporary source of revenue, while the other half, which is $509,000, is, or $550, is closer to ongoing based on the student enrollment for this year. So I'm pointing this out because the state law allows the board the opportunity to revise your budgets by January 31st. So I would propose coming forward, even though I don't have any proposal of how to spend it, appropriating the additional use of $1.2 million, allowing the superintendent to work with the board to determine how to use those additional resources for this school year. So they're going to our instructional programs. So if we spend no more dollars out of the reserves that I've already outlined, this would be an example of what your ending reserves would look like if all budgeted dollars are spent. So non-spendable fund balance, those are the stuff, kind of think of like tomatoes on a shelf, they're the inventory in the warehouse. The restricted is Tabor, committed funds are part of the board's reserves, and then undesignated is the $4.7 million that I highlighted a couple slides ago. So an estimate of ending fund balance at $11.7 million. So we have other funds that I highlighted as we opened. There are sub-funds within the general fund, which we have a risk management fund, the athletic fund, and fee-supported funds. Special revenue funds is nutrition services, the government designated grants fund, our bond redemption fund, and a capital reserve fund under capital projects fund. So based on activity and revenue and awards, specifically under the grants that are coming in between now and last June, I'm also proposing that we need to increase the budget for our government designated purpose grants fund by $1 million. Those increases are coming from the carryovers of unspent monies in both the READ Act and ELPA, and getting the final award on our BEST grant, which was about $1 million greater than what we had originally budgeted, not knowing if we would get that grant. And so by revising your budget allows the legal threshold to be raised in order to spend these resources that the district has. Under the fee-supported fund, this is a fund that we continue to develop and move some programs into out of the general fund, primarily because they're fee-supported, and to be able to provide different data and different views about the programs. So one of the things that we did this year was we moved the Lester Arnold High School's child care program. It was in a couple different spots and moved it out here to the fee-supported program after we adopted the budget. So in order to move those expenses to align with the revenues, we would need to make an appropriation for that. And then it would increase the transfer from the general fund. No change because the positions were budgeted in the general fund. This is kind of an accounting technical maneuver to move it out to the fee-supported fund. So it's more you appropriate by funds, not in totality of all your funds. So that's causing us to bring forward about $175,000 from the Lester Arnold program. Additionally, as we've started to explore what some of the accounts are, we have a before and after school program at preschool. And those were being accounted for inside the Colorado preschool program, which state law does not allow us to commingle those dollars. And so this program is now also being moved out to fee supported to properly account for the before and after school program for our preschool program. We currently had moved the elementary schools before and after school programs here last year, and this now completes that process of cleaning up our accounting of these programs. So that generates, so between the two, that's about an additional $260,000 of appropriation the fee-supported program will need. And then under our capital projects fund, when we adopted the budget, the fund balance was appropriated, what we projected our fund balance to be, but we had expected the roofs at both DuPont and Kemp to have been completed by June 30th, and they were not. Therefore, our fund balance was increased by $670,000 on the audit. So again, to move the appropriation into this fiscal year, we would need to revise the appropriation to $5.9 million so that those projects can catch up with themselves, since they didn't happen in last year as we had anticipated. So my proposal for revising this year's budget is to increase the budget in the general fund by the 1.2, increase the fee supported by the 260,000, and increase capital projects by 670,000. So this is also kind of the kickoff to start your planning for your 2017-18 budget. And one of the things that is important to highlight is all the different factors that go into your budget planning. A lot of times people think I spin into a closet and come out and we have a budget, but there's a lot of input and conversations that do take place that come into play to create a budget that gets presented to the Board of Ed. So one of the things that we need to think about as we start that planning is what's happening at the legislative level. So the governor has released his proposal for the budget, and in his proposal, he has proposed that we increase funding for schools at the rate of inflation, which is not known yet, so they're estimating rate of inflation to be at 2.7%, which is part of Amendment 23 to the base. So if the inflation comes in at 2.7%, that would be $171.93 increase for every student that we get funding for. However, in the next sentence, he took it away. So he increased the negative factor of $45.4 million statewide to the 11.7% increase. It's an increase of 0.2%. So instead of getting a 2.7% increase, you're getting a 2.5 technically percent increase. And so there's some important numbers to note with that. So I don't believe we will be funded at the same number of pupils next year as we are this year, but assuming that we are, the governor's proposal would generate approximately $1.1 million new to the district for next year. Federal funding, we do still receive, obviously, impact aid for the reserve. However, it's important to note we have a new party going into both the executive branch and the legislative branches at the federal level. And it's unknown what's going to happen to this. It's not likely that we would see that to be decreased, but it's definitely something we have to continue to watch, because the federal government has not adopted a budget for their fiscal year they're in right now. They're doing what's called continuing resolutions. And as long as they're doing continuing resolutions, this funding is still up for risk right now in our current budget. Again, no indications coming out of the Capitol that would say they're not going to fund impact aid. But clearly, if you're a district that relies on this impact aid for your funding, Dr. Abrego has significant experience with that. This could be a significant issue to those school districts that receive significant amounts of their budget. For us, it's about 4% of our general fund comes from impact aid. I'm projecting that we will see continued declining enrollment over the next couple of years. We already know that the para rates, or our pension funds, are going to increase by a 0.5%. They're going to increase to 20.15% next year. Salary increases, there's negotiations are always open for the economic parts of those contracts. And I just brought some numbers to put into perspective what the new dollar amounts would equal. So, not breaking them down by group, but if we were to provide every group, because over 80% of our budget is people, if we were to provide steps, columns, and a 2.5% increase to the salary tables, that would cost the district $2.7 million. And so it's important to note that that is greater than the 1.1 million that's currently projected in the governor's proposal. And that's before you talk about healthcare costs, utility costs, and any other program costs that need to be addressed in the organization. So depending on how the board spends the $700,000 from the abatement, that could be an additional $700,000 that would need to be cut if it wasn't on a one-time source of funding. So it's important to note all of those types of challenges. And this isn't unique to District 14. It's something every district's been facing. So the negative factor has been in place since 2010. And it roughly takes $8 million out of our funding at District 14 every year. And so we are up over $54 million has been lost in funding that should have come to this district for general fund support. So this next part is addressing a calendar. It's a draft. It's always in motion based on the directions the board would like to go. And so for December, it's analyzing our October count, presenting the audited financial statements, and kind of where we're at and where we're headed. You will also authorize your property tax levies tonight for the 2017 calendar year. Moving into January, maintenance and operations will begin working with schools and principals. They're already doing that, but they start compiling their official requests around cap reserves. Cap reserve is funded out of your general fund. It doesn't have very much money. I think it has $1.3 million to fund all of the needs that we have within the district. And 450 of that goes to technology, and 250 of that goes to a long-term debt this district has on energy efficient projects that have been in place for several years. So it doesn't have much money left, but they try to do the best they can with the resources we have. We have a board meeting on the 10th. It's a good opportunity for our board to start developing budget goals so that we have a goal and a direction and a purpose that we would be developing. Dr. Abrego would be working to create and develop a budget to present to the board. Obviously, student enrollment projections will play a role, and then staffing. Since 80% of our budget's staffing, those are formula driven based on student enrollment numbers. And so the rest of this is just the calendars as we go through. The reds are things that are statutorily written into state law. We have till January 31st to revise this school year's budget. And I would anticipate doing that probably at the 24th board meeting, so it's highlighted there. I've created some spots for the DAC subcommittees, if that's what that's going to look like for this year. That can be modified if that's different. And as we move into June, the preliminary budget must be presented to the board before the 1st. We must do a public posting, have a public hearing, and adoption by June 30th. And so that is an update on the funding of schools as we know it today. Are there any questions?
2.7 million on the future budget,
Yes, the expense.
that was excluding the healthcare increases, was it?
That's correct. All I did was just take what steps and columns, which are lane movements for teachers, and a raise to the salary table would be.
Because the healthcare, depending on what they come back to us.
We had a 4.5% increase last year.
So it could be more.
I don't know if we'll be fortunate enough to stay that low. That was pretty fortunate.
And the utilities, because of buildings.
Utilities, we're seeing, water has been, just like your homes, the water has been a significant increase in the organization for this year, as they adjusted those water rates this year.
What were they charging this year?
I don't know the exact rate on a gallon, because we have different water districts, but it has gone up significantly since the prior year. When they changed their rates, they did that March of last year, I think. There were some news stories about people getting the bill shocks that were coming from that. We're no different, and that's definitely something that we continue to keep an eye on with our energy conservation programs.
Okay.
My question be for Dr. Abrego. On page 7, to be slide 13, the top one. Page 7. See if you got it.
I'm
You got
sorry.
it?
What
Hey, do you have it?
Yes.
Could you get back with the board to see if all those programs has been implemented in the district at 1.8 million?
I believe everything's in works, but the innovation planning for schools hasn't been allocated out to schools yet.
Yes, the benchmark curriculum, we did spend the 1.2 million.
Right.
The induction program, I was not here, but I'm pretty, when I've talked to some of our leaders, there was a lot of professional development done during the summertime in various areas. I believe this induction program was led by Mr. Robert. Okay, so that we did do that. The professional development for new curriculum, again, there was a lot of training coming in from private companies that was done over the summertime, and I do believe that most of our schools took advantage of that, and some of it is still ongoing.
Because I'm looking at it saying this should be budget between 16 and 17, and I'm trying to figure out for myself how come everything was done in the summertime before, I understand you hadn't got here yet, but it should have been allocated all throughout the school year. So that's my.
It is,
And
actually.
it started in the summertime.
Okay.
It's ongoing. We still have a lot of professional development that's going to take place second semester. So the funds are there, and it has all been allocated.
And the curriculum mapping for the high school 9 and 12th grade, that 160,000.
That was done this last summer. They had worked on that curriculum mapping this summer, I think, right? Did you do your curriculum mapping last summer?
That got put on hold.
It got put on hold. So that's to be done yet.
So that's 160,000 that's put on hold.
180.
It's 160 for the
160.
mapping.
Oh, I'm
It's,
sorry. I'm looking at the one below that. Okay, yeah.
And the innovation planning for schools is 180,000. So that's what you working on now, or how?
it has not been allocated. It was to be allocated out by the schools, but I think it's fair to say that one was placed on hold as well, as the new leadership came on board.
So reality is you're giving us 180, and we haven't used 180.
I
So
don't
it
know
should
the
be-
answer to that. I would have to refer to Dr. Abrego if he's got plans for that, as they're developing the innovation plans. But as of right now, it has not been spent.
So if the things haven't been spent, but you're giving it to us, and you're giving this to us in the PowerPoint presentations, my exception, me personally thinking it's been spent, but it hasn't. So can we get a update far as what has not been spent for the school year and what has been spent, what has been allocated to the district and what has not? Because it's confusing to look at the numbers, and if I'm not mistaken, the 1.8 million is added into the slide 14, which it says budget for use for reserve 1.8 million, took it to 2.599. And that slide right below it, so we adding things into different slides that's not used.
These were adopted budgets, and the board specifically adopted $1.8 million for these items, and that's all slide 13 is representing, is that the board had designated the use of reserves for these purposes when we adopted the budget. And since then, there have been other purposes that have been approved by the board, and that's been written below. I would need to work with Dr. Abrego and his instructional team, because I don't control the dollars, what the plan is for using those between now and June 30th.
Correct. And if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Storts, he sends the board monthly, every other month, those checks that goes out, checks and balance of what been paid out to the district. And as I've been looking, a lot of these things have not been paid out. So I'm asking Dr. Abrego, can you get a count of everything that has not been paid out before January? Because my assumption is the 1.85 million, if it ain't paid out, it's gonna go to the reserves. It's something we can still do, but it's the principal is here from the high school. Everything I'm looking at has been put on hold. So I don't understand what's going on. If the board approved this and we had it for the 16-17 budget, from my understanding, those things should have been implemented or going through what the board approved. Now we sitting up here saying it's been put on hold. It's been put on hold, and it seemed like nothing is getting done, as far as my concern of sitting up here.
Right, and I'm not quite sure we're on the same page, but I want to say that the board approved this for the 2016-17 budget. That means that's throughout the whole year, and we use those monies all the way through the end of the school year. For example, you're talking about the innovation plan. We're just in the process of writing the innovation plan, so we don't have all the things included. Once we do have our innovation plan, then we'll have the luxury of having this $108,000 to implement some of those things. So I thank you for the, approving the budget, but you have to understand that those monies have to last us to the end of the school year, and, in time, we will spend all those monies. I believe the high school, too. I know you're ongoing with the curriculum mapping, so the process has started. Am I correct, Mr. Thompson?
It'll start second semester.
Okay, so it's going to start in January, and I don't know how much of those funds you will exhaust, but I'm sure you're going to put a good dent into the monies that are appropriated for you, the $160,000. So you have a plan to spend those monies? Okay, good.
So it's important to note that most of these items are salary, except for the benchmark. And so the induction is paying for staff when they're coming in off their contract time, working on induction and mentoring. And that is paid throughout the entire year. There's a big week at the beginning of the year, and then there's monthly induction that takes place. I think there's an item on your agenda tonight that talks about the professional development, which I believe is going to be paying benchmark, which is the 1.2. And I'm not sure what's the last month we've gotten checks, but I know that since the end of October, 1st of November, benchmark has been paid for the curriculum that was purchased for this year. So almost all of that $1.2 million, those books have been received, have been implemented out in our buildings, and those invoices have been paid recently.
So the only two are the curriculum mapping and the innovation, because we have the whole school year to implement that.
Yeah, and I think with Dr. Abrego coming on board and giving him an opportunity to develop a plan that fit with that adopted budget is part of the reason for some of that delay.
Are there any other questions from our board members? No? Well, thank you very much for the presentation, and PowerPoint was well done. Thank you. And then we're going to be moving on. We have another presentation, athletic director from the high school on athletics, correct?
Okay. Yes. Good evening, Superintendent Abrego, President Rowland, distinguished board members. First, I just want to give a real-time update. I just got a text from Roy Swift, our basketball coach. They just won 2 games in a row at the Arvada tournament. They're now at 3 wins. They've matched their win total that they did last year. Girls are now competing at Skyview, so I'm waiting for that update. Last game they played, they put up 60 points over Alameda in a win, so I'm seeing progress there. Let me start with kind of the beginning of the year. I know that there's been quite a few changes, and I'll go through these. In terms of coaching hires, I'll go over, here's the numbers. There were 6 coaches hired for football, 1 for cross country, 4 for boys soccer, 2 for girls softball, 2 for cheerleading, 4 for boys basketball, 3 for girls basketball, and we just did interviews for another swim coach because we are currently at 30 swimmers, and we just interviewed someone with diving experience, and it is very difficult to find divers, and that's going to grow our program. So with that total of 22 new hires, we went through the committee process. Athletic director, Fred Applewhite, and teachers from the school, students, and some community members. Once the head coach was hired, the head coach took part in assistant coach interviews. Out of these coaches, the majority are now certified teachers working at our school. All the non-certified teachers are registered with CHASA for 1 year, and they all have their concussion certificates and all their other CHASA certifications and CPR. Each coach will be evaluated throughout the year. I evaluate practices, I evaluate games, I meet with coaches consistently, and contracts will be offered in May depending on the progress of the program. Out of those 22 new hires, 9 of the coaches have Division I playing experience. So I think that's a step up for what our kids are getting in terms of coaching and in terms of role models. Our coaches are currently working with coaches at middle school to help get these students to stay interested in sports and also to come to Adams City. I know a couple weeks ago that Gianni, Mr. Thompson, talked about the certified athletic trainer, and thank you for approving that. That will start at the first of the year. I'll be meeting this week or into the holidays with a representative from Children's Hospital in order to get that person on board as soon as possible. Couple other changes. Eligibility. This year, we changed our system in terms of our eligibility now goes from Wednesday to Wednesday. Last year it actually went from Wednesday to Wednesday, and there were a couple days where students were able to raise their grade. According to CHASA law, the week of eligibility needs to match the week of ineligibility. So we tightened that up. What we've seen also with a higher emphasis on posting and that being final is that the expectations for the students have been raised, and teachers are really on board with, checking for understanding and assessing their students weekly. So not only is it benefiting coaches, parents, and student athletes, it's really that emphasis is on the teachers to say every week we should have some measure of progress for these students.
Let me ask a question there then. What if a teacher does not put in a grade for that student? Gets punished the student, the athlete, or the teacher?
Well, we look at those on an individual basis, and I have had meetings with both parents, students, and teachers to make sure that those grade books are updated. About a month ago, we did have a training with Miza from the ESS building so that she could come and train our teachers on the best way to set up a grade book and also to post. So as some of these things are uncovered, we're always looking for better ways in order to make it efficient on the teacher, but at the same time make it fair for the student. So individually, we look at each case individually, never want to punish the student. So the expectation is that teachers post weekly.
So I guess my question is, one of the problems, and not just here at Adams City, it's throughout the state, is that when a teacher doesn't post a grade,
Yes.
okay, it is practice that is counted as an F, and that is punishing the athlete. Is that our practice here? If a teacher does not post a grade,
No, sir.
count as an F.
In this year, I've had meetings with Mr. Thompson and individual teachers as well as assistant principals. We are keeping track of which teachers are posting. And like I said, I am having those conversations individually with teachers, and that's part of their professionalism piece in Randa, to be able to post weekly and assess weekly.
And do you mind if I do a follow-up to Mr.
Yes, sir.
And I think I understand, I think I know where Mr. Roll is going, but I think it's very important at the high school, if I'm a student and I'm ineligible and I've worked very hard to bring my grades up, that we sort of, the administration encourage the teachers or require the teachers to post 1 or 2 grades per week. It could be a quiz, something so that the student that does work hard and you have the policy in place that they can play if they improve. But we want to be fair, so if we could encourage our teachers to maybe have mandatory that they post at least 1 or 2 grades per week?
Yes, and we've actually discussed having a training next month to set up the grade books very early. And we've talked about that as an admin staff, where in the grade books it's reflected that, you know, that we can see in the grade book each week and seeing a new grade. So yes, we always want to keep it fair for the students.
So what is the eligibility policy?
Uh,
Fs or,
Right now, it's the same as the board policy. You can still not have more than 1 F. However, there are, I know of 3 programs that allow 0 Fs, and you cannot have any more than 1 D, and that's really raising the standards. And I've seen it in these 3 sports, and I've seen the accomplishments of the students becoming eligible. So there are mandatory study halls. So our coaches and our teachers are working very hard to make sure that these students' grades are up.
So we have 2 standards, is that what you're saying? Some sports have this.
Okay.
In other sports, is that fair?
No,
Would
no,
you be the same across the board?
Eligibility is based on you cannot have more than 1 F. That is the report that we send to CHSA. However, as a coach, a head coach, if they want to raise those standards, I cannot make them ineligible, but it can affect playing time. So that will be a head coach's decision. We want these standards to be raised because even having, 1 F and 2 Ds according to our current board policy, that would still keep a student eligible, but for student athletes that have college aspirations, it won't work in college. So what is best for the students is to raise those standards.
I mean, you're talking college. I mean, 1 out of 1,000 kids go to college. Take a look at our athletic program here. How many of our kids have went on to college? My thing is, I want to keep these kids participating and keep them in school. Because I'll be the first to tell you, the only reason I went to school was to play sports. And if we had all these restrictions down, there's no way I would have stayed in school.
Our participation numbers are up in every sport this year. And what we want to see is that these students put as much of an emphasis on academics as well as their athletics. We just did an Eagles night, first time ever, and I appreciate you guys that showed up. This was actually Tom DeGuero's idea, and so we're going to run with it. For winter sports, we got all of the coaches and athletic programs together for a night of scrimmaging. We invited community members, parents, teachers. We had what was kind of cool to see with that is all the coaches got to meet each other. They were able to talk before and after, and now they are currently discussing how they can support each other in those programs. One of our coaches, Jesse Jones, has set up monthly meetings with all coaches without the AD to discuss positive coaching philosophies. So that is going to begin in January. Now, also the uniform rotation, and I have something for all of you. You asked that.
Prior to you going on there for a second,
yes,
if
sir.
I may, I did go to the Eagles night presentation for all the coaches and meet all the athletes, and the message was a very good message for the student athletes to support your school and other activities when you possibly can, because sometimes the wrestlers are wrestling when the basketball team's playing or the swim meets are going on, and I noticed an increase at the games I've been able to attend, of student athletes participating in other sports, just going to watch. So I thought it was very good. I just wanted to share that with you before you went on.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you noticing that, and I think it's a testament to the work that the coaches are doing. What I'm going to pass out now is the uniform rotation of the last 3 years of Adams City High School, Kearney Middle School, and also Adams City Middle School.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, and I apologize, I didn't do the full presentation. What I wrote here and what the athletic directors at the middle schools gave me was the last 3 years, what particular uniforms were purchased. Moving forward, we're going to look at this equitably. You know, if I look at Kearney, I'm looking at cross country, and I don't see anything purchased the last couple years. So that's going to be a priority moving into the new year. So this chart will kind of show that we're spreading out our athletic budget monies equitably. So there will be a strong emphasis on equity moving forward. Oh, let me show you a couple of uniforms. So this was from the board. Okay, this is Kearney. Show everybody here. So we got these for the middle schools.
And they are reversible.
They are reversible. So those are shorts. And we have, this is for Adams City Middle. So new for the middle school. Also, we just purchased 40 swim coats for the swim team because numbers are up. We also purchased new jerseys for both the girls basketball team and the boys basketball team, and I'll show you what they look like. So these are the away jerseys. For the boys, I don't have an example of the girls, but these are pretty nice. And they're actually higher quality than before. These are the Nike Dry Fit. So our students are looking good and they're playing good. So, and we actually ordered them some backpacks with Adams City High School. There's Bubba. So when they walk in, they're going to be walking in proud, and I've already seen that sense of pride. Not just with getting the uniforms, but what they're doing on a daily basis, what they're hearing in practice. They're very proud walking through the halls. So with that said, the next thing I want to bring up is, you know, when we look at uniforms, when we look at athletic purchases, moving forward, looking at our budget, there's a few things that I would like to get creative with. Looking at 2015, 2016, a couple things I noticed is when we put on events and what we pay out to put on those events, what we take in at the gate was only last year 28% of what we pay out for the events. So currently I'm looking at creative new ways to lower that cost so that I can put more of the money into the hands of the kids and also the clubs. Couple things we've discussed is having clubs be involved and sponsor each and every game. They would work the gate and get 25% of the proceeds. There would also be incentive to get as many people through the door through the promotion of that club. So we're trying to be creative to lower that deficit and that gap between what we bring in and what we're paying out. So we are currently looking at, like I said, creative ways moving into the new year with that. Ultimately, we want to get more students involved, get that connection between athletics and activities and all of our academic clubs. Ladies and gentlemen of the board and superintendent, any questions for me now?
I have a question. And I attended a couple of games last week with Mr. Rolla and Mr. Archuleta, and at the concession stand inside, they put a garbage bag in the ice machine, and they put the Gatorade and the sodas and the water in there. Why does this don't have a cooler or a refrigerator? I don't think that's safe.
I'll take that feedback and I'll bring it to our student council and look to see what we can do.
Does the principal know why there's no cooler or no refrigerator that's in that concession stand in the school?
Yeah, there used to be a refrigerator in there, and then once the nutrition manager was trying to have nutrition services provide all of the snack bar, it did meet Tri-County regulations, and they had it removed. And so I wasn't aware that they were putting Gatorade in there. That's a health issue, yeah. So we can't do that. Yeah, they can't put anything in that ice machine. So now it's got to be drained and new ice put in it. But I'll get that done tomorrow, and we can look into put a refrigerator in there sometime.
What was the regulations for pulling that, Johnny? Do you know?
So it was a residential refrigerator. However, we were in compliance with Tri-County, but when they were looking at trying to have nutrition services run all concession stands, it didn't meet the qualifications or regulations that were set forth by Tri-County for commercial vending.
Because just like Mr. Thomas and I were talking about, we got a nice looking facility, and then we got a half blanket because I don't know if we're not wanting to spend money, or instead of looking and saying, okay, what do we have to do to get that refrigerator? Because even in the football games, went up there, I think Mr. Archuleta and I went up to get a soda, and I wanted a Pepsi. Well, Mr. Roll, all we got is a hot one because they didn't put it in the ice.
Yeah.
And that shouldn't be the case. We should be able to have refrigerators if we're selling drinks. So we should have something there to keep a refrigerator instead of sticking their hands in. I know one summer I did Little League baseball for the city, and I kept sticking my hands in the ice and froze there for a while. But it's the safety of keep sticking hands in the ice is all, Mom.
Well, there was a brand new refrigerator in there, and I came back and it was gone.
Well, it doesn't
And they
have
had
to
it
be.
removed.
It doesn't have to be a refrigerator. It could be a cooler of some sort from Pepsi, Coke, 7-Up, or some vendor sells a cooler. But to put a trash bag in an ice machine and kids getting the Gatorade and stuff out for people that's buying a concession, I don't think that's not only safe, but I don't think that's not even representing this district.
Right.
And I think that need to be changed as soon as possible, or Dr. Abrego, they need to have a cooler in there as soon as possible, or something as soon as possible before another game, because that's unacceptable in this district.
All right. Well, take care of it starting tomorrow. Yep.
Thank you.
Then my other thing on uniforms, when we go to ball games, you got the nice looking uniforms, but it's tacky when you have a ball player wearing pink tennis shoes or turquoise tennis shoes. How come we don't dress the same, have the same type of shoe?
So currently, based on our budget and based on fundraisers, and I'm talking to basketball coaches about that they can use that fundraiser for some of the students that cannot afford those shoes. I know that accounts have been set up with East Bay where parents actually directly work with that vendor, and they pay 70% of the retail cost, and it gets delivered right to their house. So that is set up. Right now, again, some of these things I do want to rectify as soon as possible. With the shoes, that is a money issue when we're talking about parents paying $100 for shoes, and then we say, okay, how do we get creative so that they all have those? But yeah, that is something I've noticed, Mr. Rolla.
Shoes and socks. I mean, you mentioned Mr. Applewhite. When I was coaching there, I remember Mr. Applewhite says, Coach, you get that kid off that court and go have him put the right socks on. I mean, we want to look like thugs. We want to look like you look good, you play good.
And just with that, I think with a higher emphasis on discipline and integrity and honesty to a sport and the school, I think not only is it just about looking good, but I think that our students are really, really controlling themselves and representing very well when either at home or away. So I'm very proud of them in that way.
And as you should be. I've noticed a difference in the girls' basketball team with the eligibility stuff, because I follow girls' basketball quite a bit, and some of the girls that were playing with lower grades. This year, they're sitting for a little while. They're not real happy about sitting, but guess what they're doing? They'll be eligible. They're probably eligible to play tonight.
That is one of the programs that the coach did raise that standard to not having more than one F. Okay, they don't want any Fs and no more than one D, and I see it working.
And I do want to thank you for having our kids look good when they competed against each other in the basketball game at the high school. Thank you for making that happen.
Well, I would like to thank the board for making that happen too. So
Thank
thank
you
you.
for having the game at the high school.
Yes, sir.
And just the participation has gone up. I mean, it's just little things like that that bring the community members back to our schools, back to their future school, was a big thing for them. But I do want to have conversation with you later
Absolutely.
on because, you know, the C team shouldn't be last to get uniforms.
Okay.
And they should be enough uniforms there for our teams to look alike because they all compete.
Yes, sir.
So it's a conversation that maybe we need to have, you know, we need to probably do something with the swim team also with 30 students is a lot of students to be competing in. You know, we usually have 25 to 28 kids, but 30 start getting a little bit expensive for the parents. And, you know, those are things that, in my opinion, aren't really expensive to the district to help with some of those things, so.
Okay. And last, I just want to say I appreciate this opportunity. I'm proud to serve this community and the students at Adams City High School.
Okay, just one more thing, so I go to sports, but how come our cheerleaders haven't been cheering?
They cheer at football games. We've only had they just competed in state December 8th. So they were getting ready for their state tournament, and I've already set up the schedule with cheerleading, and we want to do some more things at halftime. Our new cheerleading coach is doing an amazing job. She has 25 students out. We have a great assistant. So yeah, that schedule is being made as we move into the new year. That's the bulk of our basketball games, both boys and girls. She's even considered what to do with wrestling and coordinate with our wrestling coach on what that actually looks like. So those discussions have happened. We've only had 3 home girls events and moving into the new year because, like I said, they just finished state. So now they're moving into performing at the games. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is that it?
That's all we have for the reports.
Okay, now we will now move on to routine items, consent items, personnel 1.0. I need a motion to accept 1.0 personnel.
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none, could I have roll call, Monica, please?
Mr. Archuleta?
Aye.
Mrs. Quintana?
Aye.
Mr. Rolla?
Aye.
Mr. Thomas?
Aye.
Moving on to personnel 1.1, superintendent's recommendation, resolution number. Need a motion to do that is certification of amounts to be raised from tax levy for 2017.
So moved.
Second. Did I say it loud enough? Second.
Is there discussion? Hearing none, could I have roll call, Monica?
Can I point out a couple things before you take that?
Oh.
Sorry about that.
Okay, yeah, my fault.
It's okay. I wanted to take this opportunity since this is where you set the property tax rates for taxpayers for the calendar year 2017. And as I shared, the assessed valuation has gone down. It's $637,604,680,000, where last year it was, I don't have the exact number on me, but it was about 1% higher than what it is. So the state law directs you don't have a lot of latitude in what you set for your property tax. And so it's been defined already in the School Finance Act, and the Tabor constitutional amendments and other constitutional amendments that come into play. So the state of Colorado really directs school districts what your property levy will be attached to the School Finance Act. And so we have been frozen at the 24.688 mils for several years, because that's as low as you can go. You can't go up under Tabor, and you can't go down. And so then that backfills the rest of the way from the state's coffers to complete the School Finance Act funding. We have an override that generates $4.8 million. You're locked in on the revenue, so as assessed valuation goes down, your mills go up. As assessed valuation goes up, your mills go down, so that you do not collect greater than the $4,890,000 that was passed back in 1996. We have outstanding debt, and so you are collecting property tax to make your principal and interest payments for June of 2017 and December of 2017. So you are collecting property tax over a 2 fiscal year period, because June is in this school year and next December will be in the next budget year. And that's why you have a balance, a fund balance in your bond redemption fund. It has to be a big enough balance at June 30th to make your payments in December, because we collect most of our property taxes in February and April. And then I shared with you during my other presentation the abatement. In order to collect the $771,000, you are assessing 2.479 mils to pick that up. I wanted to share with you with some statistics, because people don't understand how difficult it is for a district like Adams 14 to generate revenue specifically from a bond for capital needs. So for every mill you set, so for every 1 mill you set, we would collect $640,715. Now, when you compare that to some of our neighbor districts, it shows what the impact is to a property tax owner based on how much they can generate. For example, Denver Public Schools can generate over 20 times more for that same 1 mill than Adams 14 can with that 1 mill. District 12, they can calculate $2.1 million for that $640,000 that we generate. Cherry Creek is $5.2 million, Aurora Public Schools is $2.1 million, and St. Vrain is $2.9 million. Some of these discrepancies are the reasons that the case, it was the Lovato case on capital funding back in the 1990s, came into play, because districts like Adams 14, it's very difficult to generate enough dollars to build without it being a hardship to your taxpayers. And this is an example off of this year's tax rates, what those inequities are between district, simply because of your property base that we represent. So with that, I'm going to let Janelle read the resolution, and then you can take your vote. Or I also am happy to answer any questions, sorry.
You ready? So resolution number 16-017, Board of Education in Adams County School District 14. Certification of amounts to be raised from tax levies for 2017. Whereas, no later than the 15th day of December, the Board of Education of each school district shall certify to the Board of County Commissioners of the county wherein the school district is located the separate amounts necessary in the judgment of said Board of Education to be raised from levies against the valuation for assessment of all taxable property located within the boundaries of said school district for its general and bond redemption funds to defray its expenditures therefrom in its ensuing fiscal year. And whereas the Adams County Assessor's Office did certify a 2016 net assessed valuation for Adams County School District 14 in the amount of $637,604,680, And whereas the general fund mill levy for 2016 is established by the School Finance Act at 24.688 mills, and whereas the general fund override mill levy for 2015 is 7.669. This levy will provide $4,890,000 as approved by the voters in the November 1996 election. And whereas the bond redemption fund mill levy required for 2016 is 9.681, this levy will raise the amount needed to meet the principal and interest obligations. Whereas the net tax abatements mill levy for 2016 is 1.1157. This levy will raise the amount needed for the district to recover $771,392 of net tax abatements, which occurred during fiscal year 2016 as certified by the county assessor. Therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Education of Adams County School District 14, State of Colorado, certifies to the Board of County Commissioners of Adams County, State of Colorado, the following amounts to be raised for each of the following funds for the 2016-2017 fiscal budget year, and you see those funds and amounts on the screen before you. Adopted and approved this 13th day of December 2016.
Is there discussion? Hearing none, could I have roll call, Monica, please?
Mr. Archuleta?
Aye.
Quintana?
Aye.
Mr. Rolla?
Aye.
Mr. Thomas?
Aye.
Shucks. Okay, moving on to grants 2.0. I need a motion to pass a request for approval to accept $16,000 for the Climb Higher Colorado grant to support academic partnership between schools and family.
So moved.
Second.
Is there discussion? Hearing none, could I have roll call, Monica, please?
Mr. Archuleta?
Aye.
Mrs. Quintana?
Aye.
Mr. Rolla?
Aye.
Mr. Thomas?
Aye.
Moving on to 3.0, 3.1, Superintendent's recommendation. I need a motion to the approval of policy JLDAC-E deleting, discuss first reading, partner consent form for psychological services.
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion?
I guess my question would be, do we have another form that we're gonna be utilizing, or is the form necessary?
Mr. Robert Allen will clarify that for us.
So, psychological services are dictated through the Individuals with Disability Education Act. And so with the Individuals with Disability Education Act comes a required form that we must use that is approved by the federal government and the state government. So that's why our recommendation for deleting this is duplicate. We don't need an additional parental permission form since that's already required by federal and state law.
So do we have that? We
Yes.
have that other form?
Yeah, we're required by the act, yeah.
And I guess my question is, that doesn't need to be a board policy? That's just federal law?
Correct.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. Can we have roll call, Monica?
Mr. Archuleta?
Aye.
Mrs. Quintana?
Aye.
Mr. Rolla?
Aye.
Mr. Thomas?
Aye.
Okay, moving on to other, 4.1. I need a superintendent's recommendation. I need a motion for the approval of the in-state overnight travel to Colorado Springs, Colorado, sponsored by the Adams City Middle School Parent-Teacher Organization for Adams City Middle School Counselor.
So moved.
Second.
Is there a discussion? Hearing none, could I have roll call? Monica, please.
Mr. Archuleta?
Aye.
Mrs. Quintana?
Aye.
Mr. Rolla?
Aye.
Mr. Thomas?
Aye.
Moving on to 4.2, Superintendent's recommendation. I need a motion for the approval for Title I, Part D, grant fund services provided to Adams 14 schools District and Shiloh's Homes Incorporation.
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none, can we have roll call, Monica?
Mr. Archuleta?
Aye.
Mrs. Quintana?
Aye.
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 Moving on to 4.3, Superintendent's recommendation. I need a motion for the approval of the McCandless for repair services and parts purchasing exceeding $25,000 per policy DJ.
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion?
Yes. Who are we using today as far as service and repair and parts? Who are we using today for service and parts?
We use quite a few different vendors depending on the type of bus that we have in our fleet right now. So we have Bluebirds, we have ICs mainly. So McCandless is the only authorized dealership for our internationals that we have in our fleet right now. We currently have about 10 ICs right now. So any type of work that needs to be done, IC only in this area right now, only McCandless is authorized to do certain work on there. There are definitely certain, garages or maintenance places that you could go to have certain type of work done, but McCandless is the only one in this general area for our ICs that we would actually have them done to, and it does so warranty work to stay under warranty. They're the ones authorized to do it.
Okay, thank you.
Any other? Can we have roll call, Micah?
Mr. Archuleta?
Aye.
Mrs. Quintana?
Aye.
Mr. Rolla?
Aye.
Mr. Thomas?
Aye.
Moving on to 4.4, Superintendent's recommendation. I need a motion for the request for approval of increase in 3.0 FTE within the English Language Development and Biliteracy Department and Kearney Middle School.
So moved.
Second.
Is there a discussion? Hearing none, can we have roll call, Monica?
Mr. Archuleta?
Aye.
Mrs. Quintana?
Aye.
Mr. Rolla?
Aye.
Mr. Thomas?
Aye.
Moving on to 4.5, Superintendent's recommendation. I need a request for the approval to purchase Voyager Passport T reading intervention program to support struggling K-5 readers at DuPont.
So moved.
Second.
During discussion.
Yes. I understand we helping our readers, but I personally, this is just my personal opinion, I think it's offensive to support struggling K-5 readers. We already know that we having something in the district in this situation with these students, but that wording should be a little bit more respectful to our students than struggling K-5 readers. And then we picking out the school that they're struggling in. And I think that's very offensive for me.
And I don't disagree with that. I mean, why couldn't it just say, program to support K-5 readers at DuPont Elementary School? We know what it's for. I agree with Harvest quite a bit. I'd like to see the word struggling be struck from that policy or that recommendation. Does that take a consensus?
Yeah, and that is something that we put struggling in there due to the funding source of READ Act. Students are labeled as significant reading deficiency, so that's kind of the funding source there. But I agree. I think that's some language that we can take out of the actual superintendent recommendation.
But then I have a question.
Uh-huh.
If you eliminate that specific word, does it not open it up to all readers? Take
I
it out?
think, but in the actual language of the recommendation, it does list kind of the struggling reader and the type of reader that we're trying to target.
Okay, I just don't want people coming back later and saying, hey,
Yeah.
No, I don't,
And I think struggling was trying to encompass not just the significant reading deficiency, but also other students that are kind of in that
But for
range.
us as the board, it's in the topic.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to have struggling in the topic just like you send an email saying what the subject, it doesn't have to put that in there.
Yeah.
If we read our package, we understand that it is for those students.
Yeah.
And it is a pilot program. I'm just saying to read this out loud is putting, you highlighting the school and those students.
Okay. Any other
So do
questions?
we have a consensus to wipe out struggling?
I'm good with it.
Connie?
Sure.
Okay, so we will strike out struggling and just move the intervention program to K-5 readers at DuPont.
Motion to approve is amended.
Second.
Okay, is there a discussion on that? Can we have roll call, Monica?
Mr. Archuleta?
Aye.
Mrs. Quintana?
Aye.
Mr. Rolla?
Aye.
Mr. Thomas?
Aye.
So do we have to go back to? Huh? Okay. So moving on to 4.6, superintendent's recommendation. I need a motion.
Pending motion on the floor that needs to be voted on. Because you asked for the vote on the motion to
remove
amend.
it.
All right. Need a motion for, a motion for the request to approve to purchase Voyager's Passportee Reading Intervention Program to support K-5 readers to DuPont Elementary.
So moved.
That motion was already on the floor.
Oh, okay.
Now you have to go back and ask for a vote on that motion.
You have to go back and ask for the vote with,
On the original motion with struggling striked out.
without it. Take it out.
Well, I just read it.
did. So,
Okay.
so we,
It's really not voted on if you
We,
don't ask for a
we
vote.
have to vote on it now, instead of a motion. You read it, but we have to take a vote.
All right.
Action item.
Need a motion for the approval of
No,
request.
there's a motion on the floor
We-
already.
We need to vote on
Just
it,
vote.
right?
All right. Let's have,
Already had the motion.
there's no discussion. Can we have roll call, Monica?
Mr. Archuleta?
Aye.
Mrs. Quintana?
Aye.
Mr. Rolla?
Aye.
Mr. Thomas?
aye.
All right, moving on to 4.6, superintendent's recommendation. I need a motion for the request for approval of a temporary employee, terminated life certified teacher to support academic partnerships between schools and families and K-3 reading intervention professional development at DuPont Elementary.
So moved.
Second.
Is there discussion? Hearing none, could I have roll call?
Mr. Archuleta?
Aye.
Mrs. Quintana?
Aye.
Mr. Rolla?
Aye.
Mr. Thomas?
Aye.
Moving on to 4.7, I need a motion for the approval of the 2016-2017 School and District Unified Improvement Plan, UIP.
So moved.
Second.
Is there a discussion? Hearing none, could I have roll call, Monica?
Mr. Archuleta?
Aye.
Mrs. Quintana?
Aye.
Mr. Rolla?
Aye.
Mr. Thomas?
Aye.
Moving on to 4.8, Superintendent's recommendation. I need a motion for the approval of Benchmark's professional development purchases.
So moved.
Second.
Is there discussion? Can we have roll call, Monica, please?
Mr. Archuleta?
Aye.
Mrs. Quintana?
Aye.
Mr. Rolla?
Aye.
Mr. Thomas?
Aye.
Moving on to 4.9, Superintendent's recommendation. I need a motion for the approval of in-state overnight travel to Colorado Springs, Colorado by DuPont Elementary School music teacher on January 26th through 28th, 2017 to attend the Music Educators Conference.
So moved.
Second.
Is there a discussion? Hearing none, could I have a roll call, Monica, please?
Mr. Archuleta?
Aye.
Mrs. Quintana?
Aye.
Mr. Rolla?
Aye.
Mr. Thomas?
Aye.
Moving on to 4.10, Superintendent's recommendation. I need a motion for the approval of Kids First Nursing Services Agreement for 2016-2017 school year.
So moved.
Second.
Is there discussion? Hearing none, could we have roll call?
Prior to approving this, didn't we have Robert was gonna do some investigation stuff for us?
It was provided in Friday update.
Yeah,
Right,
correct.
right,
And
right.
our report was provided to you guys, I believe, 2 weeks ago on a Friday. Do you have any additional questions regarding that report?
No, I just wanted to make sure there was no other questions here for anybody else.
Any questions? Hearing none, could we have roll call, Monica?
Mr. Archuleta?
Aye.
Mrs. Quintana?
Aye.
Mr.
Aye.
Mr. Thomas?
Aye.
Moving on to 4.11, superintendent's recommendation, adding motion for the approval to contract with Dr. Jeannie Fagan, licensed physical therapist.
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none, could we have roll call, Monica, please?
Mr. Archuleta?
Aye.
Mrs. Quintana?
Aye.
Mr. Rolla?
Aye.
Mr. Thomas?
Aye.
Moving on to communications, Dr. Abrego, is there anything you want to communicate?
Well, the only thing I just want to say is I want to thank the board for attending the conference this past weekend. I think it was very beneficial for all of us. I also want to thank the board members for being present in all the events that go on throughout our district. I think it's very important that our community sees us at these events. And last, I just want to really thank you for helping us with the UIP plans for the district and the schools. Thank you so much.
I would just like to say that attending CASB this week was really great. Got to go to a couple workshops with other board members, and the key thing that I learned from the CASB was that if we're going to get ourselves out of turnaround, we have to start communicating a lot better. Not just between superintendent and board or board and superintendent, but it has to start all the way from the bottom. Many of the school districts that were getting out of turnaround, they contribute their communication with students, teachers, administrators, classified. Everybody has to have an input in our innovation if we're going to get ourselves out of this. So that was the key factor I found from this CASB turnaround. So just like to make sure that we maybe hopefully start doing that, and whatever innovation plans we have, we should have, they also said make sure you get input from all those individuals instead of just a couple people making the decisions, and it'll be a lot better for us. The last thing I want to say is I hope you have happy holidays. Don't eat too much. Don't want you to come back and have to buy a new wardrobe. Enjoy the time. If you're going up skiing, be careful. Or if you're going out of town, be careful. And we'll see you next year. Does anybody else have anything?
I just want to say, I'm so proud of our students for Celebrate the Beat. They performed, I think about 1,000 adults out there watching them on stage, and they were magnificent. I couldn't be prouder. And I don't get to tears too much, but when I was watching them up there, I was having tears. They were so good at what they did. And they were proud of themselves. They had respect all over them when they were up there dancing. And they were actually working out and doing some math and some steps, so they didn't realize it, but they were magnificent, and that's all I can say.
Good. And I just want to say to Connie that I was able to video it on my phone, so I'll work with communications and our people here to make sure that we put that on our website and for all our parents to view that also, okay?
Thank you.
My communication is different. I'm asked Dr. Abrego starting as soon as he can to get out to his staff that the BOE has not decided to make no cuts for next year's budget. We like for that to get out ahead of time so it don't fall back on us. I don't want history to repeat itself again, so we have not made no cuts on anything, or the BOE haven't even decided on cuts. Second, I ask, will Ms. Shamlin come up, please? Do you know approximately how many new teachers started in this district this year? New?
Let me think. Less than 100.
Less than
Yeah, I think last year was 150, and this year, I believe it was less than 100. I need to double check. It's been a few months since we've hired. And as Mr. Schwartz said earlier this evening, we're still continuing to hire occasionally.
Okay.
So I organized the induction for the program while we're waiting to hire various people. And so during the induction, that's when we induct new hires into the district. And during that induction week, we had 50 participants in induction. So I don't know how many new hires were hired after then, but I thought that was pretty remarkable because we had planned for about 100 and had about half of those for positions that we had to fill.
And for those new hires, did we start them off with like the board at 38? I think it was 38,500.
No, I'd need to run a report on exactly how much we have set their salaries at, but it's based on full-time contracted teaching experience and their education level. So it varies. If we have a brand new hire, they'll be at, and they don't have any education other than their bachelor's, they'd be at BA 001, which would be at that base salary.
That's what I'm asking for those.
Right. I can run a report, send it to Dr. Abrego. He can send it out and to Monica, and she can get that information to you as to where everybody was, kind of a report of 5 people were set here and 10 people were set there. Because I know you get that information in the board reports, but it'd be nice probably to see that, just how many exactly in each cell.
Okay.
And you just are asking for 16, 17?
That's it.
Brand new hires, okay.
I'm just trying to make sure those people that came into our district to work for our students got the pay that this board approved for them to start at 38.5, I believe it was.
Well, it would either be that or greater, depending on their education, because I wouldn't want to set somebody that has their master's
Right.
at the 38.
Yeah, thank you.
Sure.
And Mr. Stortz, can I speak to you, please? Stortz, I'm sorry. I want to say thank you for sending out that report. But that report, I asked 2 weeks ago about who used our facilities and the cost. I didn't see no one from ESS, no one used the ESS building, because nobody was on there for ESS when I looked at it today.
I don't remember seeing any from the ESS. We ran a download out of our School Dude system where that's reserved. So, no, I don't remember seeing any, any there. So if there was some, that could have occurred outside of
the 18 months.
Outside of the 18 months, or was not entered into the School Dude system.
And I did not see those who did not pay. Was it free? That list wasn't provided either.
So, right, the revenues that were included were just for those groups who did pay. So that was the way I understood the request, was to give a listing of all the groups who did pay and the revenues they gave. What we did include was an amount in total for expenses relative to internal groups who did not have to pay. So the groups that didn't pay, though, would be those affiliated or internal groups. And if you'd like a listing of those detailed out, I can get you that.
Please, thank you. That'd be greatly appreciated. Yes, those. Thank you. I'm done.
So I have a shout out to our students in this school district. It's Christmas time, and our students are very giving, as is our community in Commerce City, and the students raised enough monies at the high school level to purchase $1,200 gift cards for needy families in the city of Commerce City. All of the money that we raise goes out to them, and they might have already taken the cards, I think, from the high school. They might have taken it tonight to those needy families.
But I got a request from Mary Ann here at the ESS building, that we have a family that had a tragedy just recently. House burned down. They were a family that was homeless, happened to get a house, and the house burned down, lost everything. So with that monies that we raised with the kids' help from the high school, we were also able to give a $400 gift card to that family for, maybe they can have a meal for Christmas. I mean, it helps. But just remember, when we're out there, we're watching the games, or we're at visiting the school, or whatever we're doing, these kids deserve thank yous for what they do. Not only are they students, but they're ambassadors for Commerce City. And I just like to give a shout out to all them kids, whether they're in grade school, kindergarten, junior high, or the high school. They're just a giving community. I'd also like to report on the CASB conference. It's my second conference, and at first I didn't know if some of the classes that there were necessary for me, but till I got into them and I started listening to what they were really saying and predictions that were going on, and they had a speaker that was predicting the future of what it's going to look like, and it was really a very interesting. I wish people could see some of the stuff that I'm afforded the ability to go see, and just to understand that when I hear you talking as principals and administrators and teachers and everything at the school level, not being an educator, the struggle that you're going to have with technology and the improvement of things that are out there, and how we as a school district have been lacking in that innovative thinking. But to see where we're headed to as of right now at this point in time, I believe we're heading in a good direction. So, I'd just like to give accolades to the superintendent for attending a lot of these same things that I was sitting at. We're both there as learners to try and see what's going on and figure out what's happening, and thank the board for participating with that. I think it's necessary that we continue on down that path, but that's my break. So just remember, if you see your students in the school hallways, just tell them thank you. They'll know what it's for. That's all I have.
Any others? Okay, nothing else. There's no need for an executive session. So I guess I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
You want to discuss something, Connie, before we adjourn?
You men are doing very well.
All right, okay. I need a motion, need a roll call, Monica?
Mr. Archuleta?
Aye.
Mrs. Quintana?
Aye.
Mr. Rolla?
Aye.
Mr. Thomas?
Aye.
Okay, we will adjourn at 8:36.
That's Joe's. And you know what? I didn't get the other two. I didn't get this one. I didn't get these two
I'll get
for him.